a gift for JF.
Oh wait, we're live. Hopefully, it's not an illegal gift. I brought him a syringe, a heroin syringe. Okay, what's the? Okay, by the way, what's up, everyone? Warski Live. We have JF versus Jay Dyer. This was supposed to happen, but Jay, you got sick. You had a cup, or like we thought you were actually hiding out.
It
That
was all
was.
made up. I hired a fake doctor. He was an actor, and I had
Yeah, you got a doctor's note.
yeah, I had it all forged. I had my prescription was forged. So
And as I pointed out in my tweet, that's what happened when you deny evolution. Some super virus evolves to bite you.
the spirit of the spirit of Darwin curses and haunts me.
Indeed, there's so much happening today. I'm so happy.
Oh, there's a lot of shit that's happening today.
Yeah.
First of all, should we clear up what happened yesterday?
Yeah,
A lot of people took your sarcasm and made a lot of it. So let's clear that up for the folks at home.
Yeah, so when I said, please write to the judge in the Count Dankula case to ask for maximal sentencing, I was joking. I don't think that anyone has actually written to the judge to demand maximal sentencing. However, I clarify, and then you defended me saying, guys, this was a joke. Which is good because that's what I told you. In fact, it was a joke, and most of what I said was a joke. Mm-hmm. However, I did point out on my Twitter, and this has triggered an entire community of people. And this is what's magic with me. I'm so good at triggering people, I don't even have to do something. I trigger people by not doing stuff. And so I wrote on Twitter that although I was joking, and ultimately I don't care about him being in prison for his act of speech, I do not care about this individual because he called my ex-fiancée a drooling retard or something of the kind. And so I'm not interested in fighting for this individual. Even if I believe in freedom of speech, I don't give a shit. In fact, Andy, I'll be very honest, I have some pleasure in my mind thinking that his anus within the next 3 days will be as stretched. It will be as stretched as his earrings.
Oh my god, you're such an ass. But it's because you're pissed off at him for calling your ex a drooling retard.
It's not because I'm pissed off. I don't feel anything for this individual.
You just don't care. You don't.
I don't care, but I care about something. I want to create a precedent where Papa JF does not collaborate with people who insult his family. It's as simple as this. And if you end up through a series of lucky events in the jail, getting your anus penetrated by another guy, I will not stand to intervene. I will assume that you've consented to being fucked in the ass.
What if you said a joke? You were playing around, Papa JF, just saying a fucking joke, and then you were arrested.
I don't expect Condancula to help me in that case.
Okay, so you're saying you don't want people to be arrested for jokes. Yeah. However, if there's someone who is an asshole to you, gets arrested, you're sort of like, whatever.
This is a new philosophy.
I'm fighting right now. Do you know what I'm doing? Jay, I don't know if you heard this, but not today. Yesterday, I was talking to Brittany Venti on Kumite, okay? And I was doing my pre-pro porn thing, right? Because we're supposed to have a debate on that. However, she starts making some valid points. And then today I came out and said, I may, in the past few months, have had a problem with watching a little bit too much porn. Since December, and we blew up on fucking on YouTube and stuff. I stopped eating like regularly. I stopped working out, always stressed out, everyone attacking me. So I sort of got into the addict mode of porn, marijuana, and sort of not giving a fuck about myself. And then for the past 3 weeks, I told Failure Accomplished this. I was like, dude, I need to start eating properly. So in the past 3 weeks that I've been more open, more clear-minded, I've stopped smoking weed. I'm on day 2 of NoFap, no more jerking off until Count Dankula is free. That's how I'm fighting this. So Dankula, you better get out soon. And
So you're saying you will not masturbate as long as he's in prison?
That's it.
All right, I'm starting a counter protest. I will masturbate furiously 3 times a day as long as he's in prison, and I'm gonna enjoy it.
Oh, hear this. So I was talking about this on Kumite, and I had a dream last night that I was on the computer here, and I went onto a porn website. But in my dream, I was like, I can't masturbate. So I even no-fapped in my dream. That's how fucking. And I woke up like, oh my God, that's fucking. There's obviously a problem here. And I would like to say, I lost a lot of weight from December to February. In the past 3 weeks, I have gained almost all the weight or a little bit more back by eating specifically healthy. Salads every day, proper amounts of protein, and I've been back to the gym. So my face is looking a little fuller.
Well, yeah, your face really looks good. You seem very healthy. Mark Deaton, $5 US, says, "Fuck you, Andy. No fap hurts. I miss my Japanese newscasters. You and JF are the best. Have a great show."
Yeah. Oh, by the way, some kind of taco, $5. To be fair, it's hard to translate sarcasm from French. Also, when the hell are you going to stream on Warski Woohoo? Just Warski Woohooski?
Tonight, I believe. Huh?
I have the link down there. I needed to wait 20. I wanted to do it last night, but I have to wait 24 hours, and it's been activated. So after this stream, I'm gonna like chill for an hour, eat, and work out for a little bit, and I'm gonna be streaming tonight, doing video games. I'll be working out on streams. I have some funny ass shit. I'll be IRL streaming in the public space, and I'm gonna be doing this as sort of a controlling myself on me becoming a lazy fuck in the evening and sort of just being on Twitter battling people. So
now,
the link's down there. 1,000 subs.
I'm very excited.
No.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this, and I'm very excited about the debate with Jay. Jay, sorry, you were about to say something?
Maybe you could fap to Count Dankula and the prison stories when he gets out.
Yes. Or maybe after it's done, I'm like, fucking fapping. I won't lie. Before the stream, like the fucking, like you could tell what the addiction is. It starts creeping up. Oh, I got half an hour, maybe and I'm like, no. So I just started playing video games instantly. Get my mind off of it. I drank some water. I already ate a full fucking meal. I'm trying to stay as healthy as possible, and I will keep you all updated on this channel as well as Warski Woohooski on my progression, on my health, and try to get all the muscles that I've lost in the past 3 months from being a lazy motherfucker. So,
no, indeed, I cannot wait for that debate, but there is another good news today. Destiny is under FBI investigation for child pornography.
What?
Oh.
What happened? Okay.
Yeah, because Andy, child pornography is illegal.
Of course.
You may not know if you're an habituated listener of Destiny, because he's currently the foremost philosopher justifying what we call ethical child porn. As it turns out, right now, there is an FBI team interested in Destiny, and what I want to say publicly tonight is I've always been collaborating with police forces in any case that I could. For this case, I am particularly eager to collaborate with the FBI. If they need anything, please call me.
May I ask specifically what the what is the investigation? Okay, child pornography, but did he have child pornography? I thought that was like one of his mods that he unbanned.
Well, there are many stories across the year involving child pornography and Destiny. There are about 3 stories that have been lurking on the forum post for many years now. Some of it include having photos of one of his fans who was a minor, and he was commenting on the photo and saying, "Oh wow, I would fuck her," or "She's beautiful," or that kind of stuff, and she was a minor. And so it may very well be that some of these cases have now dragged the attention of the FBI. We will know more. It's reported that what's probably going to happen is the FBI will be confiscating his computer material, so he may not be able to stream for a a while, which is good in and of itself. But then they're going to investigate deeper to determine how much child pornography Destiny currently owns.
What the fuck? Holy fuck. I literally saw this on Twitter 2 seconds before you joined the stream. I think it was Medicare had quote tweeted someone who talked about this. So I have no idea. My fucking God. Jesus. Real fast. Yoshi K, $5. JF, IRL, Blood Sports, when? Maybe if I go down but Quebec one day, we roam the streets and we do IRL streaming. That'd be fucking fun. Party time, $1,005. Andy's taking this leader of the liberalist thing pretty seriously now. I need to be healthy. I need to be clear-minded. I have to be able to be the leader that, and I have to, and we have a lot of young people watching as well. I want to be a good inspiration for people as well because I am a little bit retarded. And if a retard can make it in health, and well-being, anyone can. 519 Forest Monk, $10. Thank you for that. And Secret Genius, $5. Glorious news about Destiny. Thanks. I like Destiny. Like I constantly, always on Reddit, starts a thread about flagging our fucking shit constantly. Always going after us. I just want him to leave me the fuck alone, please. That'd be fantastic. Someone said,
and on the subject of my political opponents getting imprisoned and investigated, which I love, we're going to have a debate with Styx and the Old Order Monday. Yeah. It's now confirmed, where I will be advocating for some degree of censorship. They will be advocating for free speech.
Oof. Damn. All right. We got, thank you for all the moderators who are accepting it. Like there's like an auto thing where it filters out stuff, but the moderators, you all on it. Thank you very much. Again, subscribe to the Warski Woohooski channel if you want to see me do fucking IRL stuff and gaming stuff. Not using Twitch anymore. Fuck that. Without further ado, Jay, you had a little cough 2 weeks ago. Is that what happened? Or did you?
No, I had bronchitis, which was the stage right before pneumonia. So, I mean, I'm still a little. You'll hear a little nasal, but that's okay. I'm good.
Cool, man. But you're all good, and you're ready for this debate. We're doing what? Theism. Was it also evolution or only theism?
I'm fine with. I mean, JF said last time that he wanted Bloodsport to be any topic thrown in, so that's fine with me. My training obviously is as a philosopher, so I'm not going to pretend that I know everything about biology. I don't at all have JF's level of training in that field. I'm fine with debating the philosophy of science and some of those topics as far as I understand them, but my central thesis is going to be philosophical. That is where I, have my expertise. So I'm more than happy to debate these topics.
I agree. It will be about theism, atheism, and we might bleed on the subject of evolution if required.
Sure.
Perfect. All right, guys. So where do you guys want to get started? JF, what's your main point of contention in the theism department?
So I mean, I'm not even close to the idea that a god may exist, that something like a god may exist, that the universe may be in a computer. I find this pretty unlikely, and I find it useless to make statements about this god since we cannot observe him. But I'm open to the idea. I'm what Richard Dawkins has qualified a level 6 atheist. I do not deny absolutely the possibility of a God. I just think that any God that you may define right now will have characteristics that you will have invented as opposed to other characteristics that he may have had. And so that's why I oppose to strong theism. I'm more of an agnostic type of atheist. Now, specifically concerning the argument that I believe Jay will do tonight, because we had a pre-interview, we had a wait-in with him, and he mentioned the idea of the transcendental argument. So I believe there are many flaws in this argument. What you will see today, I believe, is Jay trying to see in my actions, see in my scientific process, see in my behavior, things that he believes presuppose other things. and I will resist. I do not believe that there are such things. I think that science is a local type of phenomenon. If science is not the search for ultimate truth, science is what you can do when you're in a physical universe. You can adopt empiricism, not in an absolute way, not in a way that says, I'm going to find the truth about the universe, but in a way that says, I'm just a being made up of atoms in a universe, and what I can do is process the signals that I receive from that universe, and I can build theories. I have a very complex idea of how empiricism relates to coherentism, how we can build theories after we've observed some facts. But the idea that this system of functioning, which to me is a local system of functioning, it's a kind of pragmatic way of looking at the universe. This does not imply any statements that logic, that I own logic, that even logic exists, or that logic is true, or that the particular forms of logic that we use are necessarily, absolutely, and universally true. I believe that what Jay will be doing is talk about coherence, but I want to hear him on that. I don't believe that coherence is a sufficient coherence between the observations we do on the universe will be a sufficient demonstration that then there has to be a God. But I'm willing to hear the argument.
Okay. Epic. Beautiful. Beautiful. So this is going to be very interesting. Can we get, before, I know we had the weigh in already. We had the full stream about this. So JF, you just gave your thoughts on what you think about God and his existence. Now, Jay, maybe before we get really like deep into this, can you just let everyone know, like, what's your religion? How long have you believed for? How do you practice, et cetera, and sort of give your side of your belief system? Yeah.
Sure. So simply put, I believe Orthodox Christianity, which is different from both Protestant and Roman Catholic Christianity. If you heard, for example, the debate I did with Nick Fuentes, I really contrasted Orthodoxy with Western Christianity as a whole, and specifically Roman Catholicism. So basically, we have a different philosophy. We have a different approach to metaphysics and to epistemology even. Excuse me. And we don't accept, obviously, the papacy. So that would be like the major differences. Excuse me. I was still a little sick, but so I have been Orthodox for about 10 years. I was raised Baptist, never really took that seriously growing up. And then around age 21, I converted out of Protestantism just through my own research into Catholicism. I spent about 10 years as a pretty serious Roman Catholic, studying Roman Catholic theology and philosophy, and Thomism, which is the philosophy of Thomas Aquinas. And eventually I left that when I was about, as I said, 26 or 27. So I've been Orthodox for about 8 or 10 years. I find that to be the most convincing form of Christianity. And I think that the argument that I'm going to make, JF is correct. The transcendental argument is, I think, the best, the strongest, most coherent version of how we would argue for or prove theism. So that's what I'm going to be arguing. And I'm glad that he gave his initial statements there, because it's everything I hoped for.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right. Let's get into it. Let's start the blood sports.
All right, can I go first, since he gave his kind of objections?
Yeah. Some things from the chat, though. There's some people saying, yo, I think JF already lost this one. Oh, no faith. Pardon the pun in JF. JF, do you have any? These are the people calling out there. What do you think? Every
time I speak against God, I find myself in a weird situation, because I'm a right-wing guy. I'm almost an alt-righter, or at least people identify me as such. And so my audience believes in God. So I'm stuck in a weird situation where I hated Jeff is going to defend atheism again. Yeah. But I don't care. I love them and they love me, I'm sure.
I mean, you aren't an anti-theist. Let's get that. Like, an anti-theist would be someone who is so against religion, they believe that religion shouldn't exist. You're sort of like, I don't believe, but whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I'm much more of an agnostic atheist.
All right, beautiful. Remember, everyone, if you're enjoying the stream and excited for this, remember to hit like to support this. So, Jay, let's hear it. What do you got for us?
Right. So the transcendental argument, as I mentioned before, is a little bit different. I think JF has a rough outline of the kind of argument that I'm going to do, but I think he's missed some really big points, and that's because there's a little more that goes into it than just saying, well, you presuppose something like logic. Actually, the argument is a lot more forceful, has a lot more strength, I think, because what we're saying is that we all have worldviews. We all have a philosophy when we come to evidence, when we come to the way we live our lives, when we look at the world and try to understand what's out there in nature. We have a template or a worldview by which we interpret all these things. Classically, in the disciplines of philosophy, the worldview is knowledge, which is epistemology, how we know what we know. It's metaphysics, which is the doctrine of what's real, what's not real. And it's ethics. How do we know what's the good? And sometimes aesthetics is also added to the doctrine of ethics. How do we know what the beautiful is? Is there a beautiful? Is there not? Is it all just relative? So in my worldview, I believe that only Orthodox Christianity gives a coherent account of all of these aspects of a worldview. And so when we come to something like the scientific method, I'm all for science. I believe that you can look at the history of the university, which Christianity birthed the university as we know it today to the modern world. So I'm definitely not anti-science. I'm not an obscurantist. I'm not a Luddite. I don't believe any of that stuff. I in fact believe that when we properly understand the idea of who God is and what the idea of the divine mind is and how the divine mind actually is behind all the things that we experience phenomenally in the created world, we actually have a much better basis for how we can do science. So, for example, science operates on all kinds of principles, which I think, if I understood him, JF said they're not actually connected. I can just kind of piecemeal choose which thing I want to use, like logic. I don't have to have logic connected to my science. If you remember last time in the discussion, I mentioned Michael Polanyi, the famous philosopher of science. He wrote a famous book pointing out, and I'm not citing him as a fallacy of authority. I'm using him as a witness, as a testament to this argument that it's impossible to have a value-free science. Anytime you adjudicate between good or bad evidence, true or false, the evidence that we should use in this process of measuring, the evidence that we should or should not use in this classification or taxonomy system, you're already automatically assuming that this is related in some way to the true or the useful. JF suggested that his philosophy would be more pragmatic and that he's just concerned with what works. But there's a problem with that, and this is what always happens with people who have a naturalistic or reductionist type worldview, is that they don't understand, they don't see that anytime you talk about something working, or when you talk about the pragmatic, you automatically are assuming that there are things in the world that actually match up to some purpose that you intend them to have, that they actually possess these qualities of purpose. Now, I understand that the pragmatist doesn't want to say that that's actually metaphysically happening in the world, but for your worldview to work at all, for you to have the ability to predicate truths of the external world, this is going to be a big central point in my argumentation, is that you have to have some way to match what's in your mind and the concepts and the process, the mental process of what you're doing in the scientific method to actually bridge that gap to the external world. This is a classic question of philosophy. And what's amazing to me is that these questions are still being asked today. We have top philosophers in the philosophy of consciousness, guys who are trying to figure out on an empirical basis how there can be consciousness. Is the mind equal to the brain? Is there a distinction between these two? So these concepts are not old, dated things. They're still hotly being debated now. Now, JF said that he doesn't think the universe is in a computer. I don't know why he would make that argument. That's not an argument I make. I think that's a kind of a silly thing. Although it is interesting that recent research into light and light theory does suggest the possibility of things that are reminiscent of Platonism, although I'm not a Platonist. My point is just that I think that when JF said that the flaws that he saw in the transcendental argument is that science doesn't presuppose anything, this is just simply not true. Another central thesis is going to be numbers and number theory. I've never read any philosopher of science or known scientist who doesn't at least admit in some way that numbers apply to the scientific process. Likewise, logic applies to the scientific method and process. These are assumed. It's impossible to do the scientific method because you're assuming from the outset that your hypothesis has some logical relation to not just the objects in the external world, but to the conclusion of your theory, which is, again, that is itself a logical process. I mentioned a second ago, predicating about things in the external world, which is a kind of linguistic philosophy question. I don't think that JF on his worldview can actually do that. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't do it, but I'm saying that I don't think he can give an account for how he does that, because in his worldview, the external world, as I understand his view, is just flux. All is flux, all is change, all is chemical reactions bouncing. There's not any actual order in the external world. The order that JF perceives, or that he wants to be there when he looks at DNA, or when he looks at classification systems of different species and kingdom and phylum or whatever, that order isn't actually in the world. It's in his mind. It's something that is imposed on the external world in his worldview that's not really out there. So we have no basis to actually believe, if he's correct, that anything he talks about, and I've heard him actually in previous debates say, I think it was in our last discussion, he said that these are really mental constructs. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm misquoting him, I'm not intentionally doing that, but he said that really these are constructs in our mind. And so if we don't have logos present in the external world, which my view I think gives an account for, I don't think that we can even bridge the gap between the mind and the external world, right? This is a classic philosophical question. So on epistemology, I don't think that JF can give an account on the basis of his worldview. If everything is flux, how at the same time can JF hold to things that he thinks endure over time, like his own position? He believes that evolutionary theory is in some sense applicable to the external world and true, even if he thinks it's just a probabilistic truth or something that is just likely. Probabilism and statistics still relies on universal principles. Regardless of whether you want it to or not, it still assumes that this is likely true universally. You can still have something that's probable and universal at the same time. And in fact, chaos itself is still in some way in statistics relies on order. You can't have in statistics order without, or chaos without some level of symmetry to contrast it to. So what I'm saying is that effectively, I don't see in any sense in which JF's worldview could account for epistemology, for metaphysics, for how we can know that there's an external world, or how that we can actually predicate truths about the external world, or how objects that are in constant flux retain identity over time. And lastly, I don't see any coherent way to have ethics in JF's worldview, because I know that he will say something to the effect of he's a moral nihilist. This really just falls back on the individual having the right to choose this or that thing. But I also hear JF all the time talking about freedom of speech. I hear him talking about how the white race should continue, which I agree with. But I don't see on what basis should we accept these moral principles and claims if it's really just random chaotic process in the world that JF's mind imposes the order of, as he calls it, I think everything. He said something to the effect of all life is subject to the laws of thermodynamics and decay and so forth. On what basis should we care about anything like the white race, or the propagating the species, or continuing our genetic lineage? I mean, you can say, well, it's just a biological imperative, but so what? Who cares? Death is a biological imperative on your worldview. So death is actually more natural and more sensible than life itself. I mean, death is eternal in your view. Life is just a flicker. It comes and goes. What lasts forever is actually death. So in my view, I don't see any account for the process of science itself. And this is really the central argument of all of the critiques that philosophers of scientists give to scientism or naturalistic, reductionistic materialism. Once you put yourself in that box, you're really limiting yourself and leading to a lot of, I think, determined conclusions that are self-contradictory. And lastly, I'll just say that the ultimate, I think, argument against JF's position is that while JF wants there to be things like rights and he wants there to be freedom, how could we have rights and freedom in a worldview where life is subject to which I would take to be a deterministic, chaotic process that ultimately doesn't give any meaning beyond just the phantasm of the here and the now. There's nothing else beyond that. And so meaning is actually itself destroyed. And since meaning itself is destroyed in JF's worldview, and says JF's life ultimately is meaningless, then JF's arguments are ultimately going to be meaningless.
But for those who call for JF having lost on the chat, please let me speak at least before you judge me.
Give him a
so,
chat.
Yeah, I will say there's lots of things, there's lots of details in which I won't fight Jay on that. He says pragmatism, for example. People who claim pragmatism, they will have behaviors, and you can infer some value in their behavior, because if you're doing something that works, if you're using the word works, you are supposing a system of value. I absolutely agree. And I'm just saying that these values, I'm nihilistic to these values. So I didn't mean pragmatism in a deep sense as some philosophers would mean it. I simply meant that I'm a monkey, essentially. Look at this Quantaloupe, for example. I'm a monkey, okay? I interact with nature. I eat this cantaloupe, I enjoy it. There's no truth about it. It's just good on my tongue. Now, there are things that I disagree with, but I will eliminate a little bit of details in there. First, he says it's impossible to have a value-free science. Yes, of course, you can make up values by observing a scientist, by saying, oh, here's what the scientist did. He was interested in that question, therefore he presupposes a system of value. But the system of value we're talking about is an inferred system of value. It is not something I'm absolutely committed to. If the situation changes, if you're asking me, when I look at a white table to determine its color, I look at it with my eyes. I conclude, okay, this table is white based on my empirical observations of the world. I'm not saying you cannot take this and bring it to therefore God suppose some rational.
Can you repeat that?
Rational
systems.
Repeat that
last sentence.
You cut out
for a second.
Did I cut out? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You look at the white table and
I look at the white table. My eyes, they captured the fact that it's white. My mind experiences the fact that it's white. You can make all sorts of inference, but any specific inference that you make about how I proceeded there will have alternative explanations. And I didn't hear in what you've just said, I didn't hear anything that will bring me to be convinced that God exists just because I look at the world, just because I'm a creature in the world, eating quantaloupes, looking at white tables. The bridge to God has not been gapped. Now, I think that the fundamental issue in everything you've said, I will raise some more details before I get to the fundamental. For example, you said that the divine is a mind. This is a note that I'd like you to take. You haven't explained how do I get to the conclusion that whatever law created the universe or whatever law you call God is a mind. How does it need to be a mind? I don't feel it. Now, piecemeal connected. You said that essentially my worldview is a form of piecemeal selection of certain values in certain situations and others in other situations. Absolutely, it is. I recognize that a moral nihilistic perspective on the world precisely denies the idea of coherence and simply states, I'm a monkey in the world. I'm a complex monkey. I live in that world, and sometimes my biological making will lead me to do action A, action B, and action C. And you don't have to have a meta-ethical framework to justify across these situations, across these actions. You simply do not have. And this brings us to what I really take issue with. It's that Jay is asking for an explanation for science, because he seems to think that I need to explain science and logic. He seems to think that science and logic are observables. Science and logics are way to behave from creatures that exist. And in my view, they exist because of evolution. I think it's a point of detail, to be honest. So, but I will say that the reason we evolved to care about what's around us, it's what's around us is relevant to our survival and our reproduction. One does not have to explain this if you adopt a moral nihilist position, because the moral nihilist recognizes that there is no truth about a scientist being more right. There is no truth about the scientific mind to be more right than a mind that would say, I do not care about the world around me. In fact, I want to self-deceive about the world around me.
Okay, but I'm sorry, but that is a truth claim.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I can make truth claims.
There's no truth about the scientific mind which says XYZ.
Yeah.
That's a truth claim.
Okay, I make truth claim about systems that can exist and cannot exist. What I just claim is that there can be scientific mind that exist. That's okay, it's a truth claim. I didn't deny the existence of truth. I'm just saying there are systems that can exist. These biological systems, some of them want to know about the world. We happen to be one of those creatures, and most people are in some way interested in an empirical observation of the world around them. But I say other creatures could exist. Some creature could say, I want to self-deceive about everything that's around me. Now, such creatures is much less likely to exist, simply because evolution will lead you to exploit everything around you, and gathering information typically will be good. However, you'll have people like Robert Trivers, they develop theory of self-deception, of how self-deception can evolve. And what I say as a moral nihilist is there's no right behavior. You ask about the ethics. I deny that there is such a thing as good and bad. There are behaviors that evolve in certain situations. We happen to be in a species where murdering is wrong, etc.
Is it true that there's no right behavior?
Is it true in what?
This is the essence of the transcendental argument, is that any position will require some grounding that it has to start from.
So the thing is, you can make theoretical systems in which it's true. You can make a system, for example, you can think about the Catholic religion. Within the axioms of Catholic religion, there are such thing as good and bad behavior. But good and bad need always to refer to a basic system, to a system of axioms that makes some of these things bad and good. I say there is no such system, or if you invent such systems, there will be alternative, and there's no way to tell between these alternatives.
Yeah, I'm asking you a meta-level question, if that's universally true that there's no such system.
No, it's not universally true. I just explained to you, within certain systems of axioms, good and bad.
Is that true of all systems?
Is that true that within certain systems there are good and bad? Yes, it's true.
Okay, so you on the one hand want a universal truth claim to also deny universal truth claims. This is incoherent.
No, because it's a truth of possibility. We can agree that we can speculate about things that are possible and impossible. I'm totally willing to do that. It's not the truth about the world. You didn't say it was a possible claim. You said that this is true of systems in general universally. Implicit in my system, when I said that there were subsets of morality that have certain axioms and that do include a definition of good and bad, implicit to that statement was a claim of possibility. I didn't say that these systems exist on planet Earth currently. I say, yes, I can think of a system in which there are some things that are good, some things that are bad.
Yeah, I'm just asking a more simple claim if that is universally true or if that is just simply relative.
Well, every statement of truth will be embedded in a system that defines what truth is. So I'm worried when you say universal truth.
Is that statement universally true? You just said every system. So you're making universal claims every time you also try to deny a universal claim. That's the essence of my argument.
No, but I'm telling you that we can make a system in which truth equals falseness. I agree that within the conventional conversations of humans that we usually have, we take some things for granted.
How do you know that we can? I don't think we can make a system where truth equals falsehood. That would be a contradiction, and that would violate logic. If we could do that, we could just invent a system right now where I say God exists and therefore I win.
The problem is I can play the same game with you that you just played with me. You said you cannot make...
I'm not playing a word game. I'm actually making a statement about metaphysics and epistemology and universals and nominalism. Your system is inherently nominalistic because you deny the possibility of the mind having a bridge to anything external or universal. Your mind's finite. Your mind is a chemical...
I never denied that. I never denied that.
You never denied that we could. You just said science is not concerned with truths. It's probabilistic. It's pragmatic. Probabilistics, statistics, and mathematics are universal, just like logic.
No, statistics and mathematics are not universal. You could have alternative forms of mathematics. I could pound a new form of mathematics in which 1 + 1 = 7. We just conventionally we tend not to use these systems of mathematics, but you can totally question the basic axioms of arithmetics and change for another one. In fact, there are geometries that are used which do not respect the basic axioms of arithmetics.
Okay, but those are ones that don't apply to the world in which we live, right? So we can come up with possible systems where there are very strange things like multiple infinities of Cantor's argumentation, but those kinds of things don't tend to apply to our world. Our world, we build bridges based on mathematical principles that work over time and space. The same principles that build bridges in China build bridges here in the U.S., and they built them 100 years ago the exact same way. Those mathematical principles do not alter and they do not change. They're not subject to evolutionary flux. In your view, they must be. Everything must be subject to this flux.
That's actually, you are making an assumption because we live in a universe where, for example, Euclidean principles generally hold. But we've found, for example, with Einstein, that at high speed, they don't hold, and at high gravitation, they don't hold. And so the mathematics of Euclid, they are very practical to build a bridge on Earth, but they wouldn't be very practical if you were to travel from one end of the universe to the other. So mathematics don't always map onto the world. Alternative versions of mathematics are needed at different scales at which you
agree. I agree with that. But those are not contradictory systems because they operate in a more complex or a more transcendent way. I think there's a difference between a contradiction and a mystery. Even Bertrand,
even between the Newtonian view of gravity and the Einstein view of gravity.
Okay, and so, for example, if we look at somebody like Werner Heisenberg, right? So when he talks about the apparent contradictions in quantum mechanics, and I don't even base a bunch of my argumentation on quantum mechanics, but what's interesting is that he says in his in some of his lectures that at the subatomic level, we actually see geometric forms. We see the same arguments that Plato and Pythagoras made thousands of years ago manifested at the subatomic level. Now, if we're seeing form, right, that shows that even at the subatomic level, we're seeing the same geometric principles that the Greeks called nomons. How the Greeks knew about this, I don't know. How did Plato know that at that level you had platonic solids and these same forms? I don't know. But even at the subatomic level, it's not true that there's no such thing as geometric forms that traverse these different scales.
But I didn't say that you could not map geometric forms on reality. I said that the mathematics that study...
You talked about...
Jay, you keep cutting me. Please let me finish my sentences. I let you finish yours. So I didn't say that you cannot map certain mathematics on certain truths of the world. I say that there are different mathematics, and some of them will not map onto the truths of the world. Some of them will.
I agree with that.
And some of them will sometimes, and some other times not.
I agree with that, but that's not the same thing as saying that some of those systems are contradictory. You specifically said that we could create systems where truth is falsehood, and I'm saying that no, you can't.
We can. Philosophically, it's possible. You can create a system. Absolutely. You can create a system. So, you just admitted it when you said that Newtonian gravity was contradictory to Einsteinian gravity. So I can make up a philosophical system in which I consider both types of gravity, and I create a system where one Einsteinian black hole meets a Newtonian black hole. What happens? Of course, there's going to be a contradiction. One of the equations will apply, the other will not, and you'll have found a contradiction between two systems of thought. It's not a problem that there can be two systems of thought, and there are alternate mathematics. It happens. Compare Euclidean geometry to taxicab geometry. You'll see that there are alternative systems of thought, and they are contradictory in certain situations.
Okay, I think you're using contradiction in a different sense. I understand that an equation that applies to a bridge might not operate the same way as an equation that applies at a subatomic level. That is not the same thing as a contradiction. That's two different sets or two different systems, not the same thing as a contradiction. A contradiction, by definition, is a logical fallacy or flaw in formal or informal logic. That's not the same thing as two different mathematical sets.
Yeah, and I can create systems in which there are contradictions. It's just that mathematicians are not interested in studying these systems. I can tell you that I created a system. For example, my axiom is Euclidean geometry. Okay, do you accept that I create a space in which Euclidean geometry will apply? Now imagine that I say, okay, and then I'm going to draw this circle here, and I'm going to claim that this is a square circle. This is my axiom 2. Now, I just created a system that contradicts itself because it's impossible in a Euclidean geometric system to square the circle. And so I've created a system of thought that is false, that is contradictory. It is false by the standard that we usually use, which is that a system should be coherent with itself, but it can still exist. I can create it in my mind.
So what exists is merely what anything that can be created in somebody's mind. That's not true.
I'm saying you can conceive of ideas that are self-contradictory. We couldn't.
That doesn't mean they exist or that they're true.
If we could not,
you're confusing a mental concept that what you say people do of God with that being true just because we can conceive of it.
Well, here's the problem. You are committing an error when you believe that because we can conceive of coherent ideas, that they are true.
That's not my argument. My argument is that you have a worldview that's not coherent on any of the three main aspects of what it is to have a philosophy or a worldview. Now, you may not like my worldview, but I will argue that it's coherent. So let me flesh out what you said earlier, that I didn't answer how there's a bridge to the external world. So I will say that this is proven by the fact that there are a host of things that you and I and everybody else believes that we could call transcendentals or preconditions of thought or experience. These are the things that make it possible to have any kind of coherence, any kind of experience of the external world of other people or anything like that. So that it would be things like that objects have identity over time, a classical philosophical problem, that there is a relationship between one object and many objects. When science tries to classify things into different sections or groups or classes, science is engaging in the one and the many problem. That we can have an experience and knowledge of the past, something that's not directly experienced. That's a transcendental presupposition. The relations of time and space, right? Beginning, middle, and end, that this is how humans seem to be constituted to have an experience of time and objects within the temporal sphere, beginning, middle, and end. This is how we don't learn things from reverse to end, generally speaking. All of these kinds of things are things that are not empirically justified, that we assume, that we believe in, the laws of logic that they actually apply to argumentation, that meaning can be transmitted from the chemicals in your head to the chemicals in my head. That's not a naturalistic process. In fact, it goes against the naturalistic process because it transcends anything empirical. So these are all kinds of things that I would say are not empirically verifiable, but that we have every rational reason to believe in. Right, because they're preconditions of experience, they're preconditions of transmitting information and knowledge, and they're preconditions of life as a whole. So I would say that all of those preconditions together, if you would think about bundling them all together, the only way that that makes sense is that if we live in a world where there is a God who is an omniscient mind, who is a divine creator, and we're made in his image, and therefore we have the ability to do things like he does. So when you said, how do you explain a divine mind? I would say, by analogy to the human mind. We have a mind that has the ability to contain facts, to contain numbers, to contain things even that are inconceivable, like infinity, or objects that transcend our capacities, naturally speaking, like mathematical Mandelbrot sets, or like a kilogon, these kinds of weird geometrical figures that cannot exist actually in the human mind, but we have every reason and proof and evidence to believe in them, right? So all of these things together, I would say, show a world grounded in divine mind, and that the real basis of reality is psyche, and that everything has an archetype or form or pattern behind it, right? This, I would say, is grounded in the divine mind, and not in the human mind. So we can image and reflect like the divine mind can when we learn about objects in the external world. And that's how we can classify our experience. That's how I can link the earthworm that I was studying last year to the earthworm that I was studying this year, because they have the same properties. They share the same qualities that are not just secondary qualities, but actually they have a universal essence that they share. So this is the whole point of Plato. This is what Plato said a long time ago. This was his whole argument, was that things have to have essences, or else we don't really have any way to know about the external world. I think that's a extremely strong argument, and it's an extremely strong argument against empiricism, naturalism, and reductionistic materialism.
So I will let Andy read some super chats after I just answer to these, or do you want to read before?
Okay, I'm not jacking off. The entire chat is JF's winning, Jay's winning, Andy hands up, Andy's masturbating, Andy, and I'm literally like, I was like this, you saw me like that, and they're like, no, you're still doing it. I'm not. I'll read super chats. People have been donating. There's some good stuff in there, and I want to get into that. But should I lower the camera a little bit?
I think we should be seeing your penis at every moment of the show.
Well, not see my penis area.
Okay,
fine. While you answer to that, I'm gonna fucking fix the camera. God damn.
Okay. Yeah. So Jay says it's a whole word salad, because he says some things that are true that we tend to assume, but then how this would lead to a divine mind is absolutely obfuscated. So first, objects are constant. I think he's mixing here between the way we communicate stuff and the way we actually do stuff. In science, we don't assume that objects are constant. We assume it if we use the same word at time t equals 0 and time t plus 10. We want to say, okay, the squirrel has done this, and therefore the squirrel has changed. We don't assume that objects are constant. We say that the squirrel may have changed his view, he may have changed his choice, that there are some events in the universe that may have happened. So objects are defined at the word and semantic level for the purpose of communication. It is not a truth about the world that objects are constant. He says we can have an experience of the past. Well, sure. How does that lead to the divine mind? No idea. The relation of time and past. This is something that is actually not taken for granted in any science, but most science, yes. For example, biologists, they think of things as evolving into the time. However, someone like a physicist doing thermodynamics will not necessarily assume time, and he will try to define time as a dimension. Now, again, the problem with what everything Jay said is we don't get to a divine mind just because there are monkey-like creatures in the world looking at the world. There's no explanation for it.
Okay, first of all, you said that science doesn't assume that objects retain identity over time. Of course it does. You just assumed that when you talked about the same squirrel in both experiments. If you think that's the same object, which is a philosophical question, you're assuming that there's identity over time. Of course it does.
But what I was saying is that if I communicate as a biologist to my colleagues, of course I'm going to talk about the squirrel, but we all recognize that the squirrel could be recycled in different atoms, that the squirrel could not be a squirrel anymore, and so objects can lose their property in our science. If I'm a biologist, cutting the squirrel in two is enough not so that it's not a squirrel anymore. If I cut it, if I'm a quantum physicist, I can make explode all of its atoms. I can divide them into the energy they release as matter transforms into energy, and there's no more matter left. It's all energy. I mean, we don't assume that squirrels remain squirrels. We assume that squirrels remain squirrels in a biology experiment for the purpose of communication.
Right, and I'm making the argument that it's not possible to have that level of communication unless you assume that objects actually possess an identity over time, which when you gave your explanation, you basically just restated that objects have identity.
All right, let's read some super chats for a sec.
Just to be clear on that, I didn't. I said that objects can change. I maintain this position, but go ahead, Andy.
People are fucking funny, man. The chat's funny. This is, by the way, this is an intense debate. I've been trying to stay focused, but everyone in the chat is just throwing me off. But this is absolutely insane. And a lot of people, this is the first debate. By the way, this sucks that I have to lower the camera because now the sign that I bought, the expensive sign, isn't on camera anymore. People still don't believe me. But this is the first debate, I think, that the chat has literally been pretty much half and half torn. And they're like insulting. People are saying kick JF. I've never seen kick JF in the chat. Rare. And people are saying that, like, who is this? Oh, Jay is trolling. People think you're trolling. That's what this is. So I'm going to pound through a few super chats real quick. The first few aren't about the debate. It was pre-debate, but then we get into the deep stuff. I'll pound through it fast. Secret Genius, $5. Glorious news about Destiny. Thanks. Some kind of taco, $5. Destiny should have gone with no FAP, like me, day 2. Joshua Larson, $2. Andy looking thick, my guy. Hello, prepare JF. Alan O'Reilly, €5. Destiny wanted to fap to someone his own size. Notice me, JF. Andy, leave our Irish women alone. We don't need any little maple potatoes running around. Aval Liberty, $2. God is either important, non-existent, or malevolent. Malevolent. This is only a test. $10. Thanks for coming on, guys. Hashtag Hail Warski. Gabriel Ninja of Death, $5. Praise God, Emperor Warski. Can I be Secretary of Anime shitposting in the glorious new Trapno State? Of course. Praise the Trapno State. 519 Forest Monk, $5. Wishing you both a good debate. And Tyler Durden, $10. Hail Warski. Is it too late to put in a bid to be minister of the former Appalachian territories of the Trapno State? Aussie Mandius, $2. Thank you. Ericoda, $5. Here's where we start getting into the actual debate. Okay. Isn't God/gods just the brain seeing behaviors in nature?
Is that me?
Anyone want to answer that?
I mean, you're almost right, but it's worse than this. It's the brain imagining stuff.
Right. And my response to that would be that that's really all that JF or any atheist could say. And the irony here, which has been repeated over and over, is that JF really wants there to be universal statements and claims as he weasels his way out of it and says that there is no universal claim. When I say there is a universal claim, it is not a universal claim.
Yeah, no. And let me explain something to you, Jay. There's no universal claim because I'm a monkey-like creature talking about what I can conceive in my mind. It's not universal, it's me.
Yeah, but that I think you're missing that's a universal claim. Just because you don't want it to be doesn't
even
mean
that is not a universal claim because it comes from my mouth and it comes from my brain. It's local to my perception of the world. I'm not stating truths about the universe. That's why your universality is bugged forever and you won't ever get out of this one.
Just because you said something at one place and point in time and space, that has nothing to do with whether a claim in logic or in epistemology is universal or not. What makes a claim... No, it doesn't. What makes a claim universal
I'm saying you're right. You're right, Jay.
Okay.
Everything that comes out of my mouth is not the universal truth. And what makes it true in the local human society we live in is that there are people with brains at home who can agree on that truth. Truth, intersubjective truth, I'm willing to agree that it exists, not universal truth.
Is it universally true? Is that universally true? You see, that is a universal truth claim.
No, it's true in the head of a monkey-like creature talking to you on the internet.
Yeah, is that true at all times and in all places? You don't know.
There are universes in which JF doesn't exist.
You don't know that.
You're right.
You don't have any
experience that they exist.
Of that.
Yeah, so because I'm a monkey-like creature talking to you, having no hold on any sort of universal divine truths.
Do you think all humans, I mean, you do, right?
All humans that we know on planet Earth, yes.
Uh-huh. And if you go to another planet, are you still the monkey-like creature making that statement?
If I travel and my physical integrity is maintained, then yes. If I'm being recycled in the process and transformed into a squirrel, then I'll be a
universal claim, JF.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's
not.
You
don't understand what a universal claim is.
No, you don't understand that you're talking to a guy. It's a claim by a guy.
That has nothing to do. You don't understand. That's basic epistemology, dude. This is epistemology 101.
Every single people every single religious people I talk to constantly confound the fact that I'm just a guy with the fact that I'm trying to state universal truth. I've denied universal truths in the field of ethics. I can even deny them.
If you say there's no universal truth, that's a universal claim.
No.
Yes, it is.
It's a claim that I do.
Just because you say I'm making that claim does not negate what a universal claim is in epistemology. It's a fundamental idea of epistemology that claims are either universal or particular. And even a particular claim can be universally the case.
Yeah, and I claim things about stuff that my brain can conceive. And if you have something that contradicts my statement, I'm willing to hear you. What I say is I've never been exposed. I've never been exposed to
when you say there is no right behavior.
Yeah,
that's a universal claim by definition. It doesn't matter that just
right behavior for me. You won't convince me that there is a universally right behavior because I can imagine another society on another planet.
I'm arguing the claim itself is a universal claim.
No, it's not.
Yes,
you want to give more value to my statement than I do myself.
No, see, you don't want it to be because you know that it is.
So you're suggesting I'm lying?
There is no. Those words are a universal claims. And it doesn't matter that you as an individual said it.
They are claims made by biological creatures.
By your reasoning, if I say all birds are green, that's not a universal claim just because I as an individual said it. It's a universal claim. And it's
know what I will conclude about your birds? I will conclude that you live in an isolated space in the universe where all birds are green, and that you've never seen a red bird.
Misunderstanding of basic logic and epistemology and what a universal claim is. If you take a basic logic class, you'll do things like modus ponens and modus tollens, and you'll learn what a universal claim is. It has nothing to do with an individual making the claim. It's simply what the claim itself claims a priori or universally. It has nothing to do with how many people say it or one person or no person. It's simply what the claim itself says. So when you say there's no right behavior, that is a universal claim. It doesn't matter how many people say it.
The thing you seem to refuse to acknowledge up to now, I'd like to ask you a question about it. You seem to refuse the concept that any claim will have to be made by a biological creature with a certain access to the physical universe around it. Do you think that claims are true when they're on a piece of paper, when no one can evaluate them, when no one is there to interpret their meaning?
You mean like science papers and research, peer-reviewed papers?
Well, let's say there was a piece of paper on which some mathematical statements are written, but no one can understand these mathematical statements. Mm-hmm. It's an isolated truth that has a point of reference all around itself. There's never an intelligent being who will be able to read that paper. Is that truth or not truth?
Well, if you're asking me, do I believe that immaterial objects and mathematical principles are external and do not depend upon the human mind? Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's where we differ. So I think we found the problem. Mathematical statements,
I'm saying they're real.
To me, are held by minds.
No, they're not. And I gave you two examples where they're not.
What are the examples?
A Mandelbrot set or a fractal and a kilogon. No mind can hold those.
No, we cannot picture the fractal necessarily, but the mathematical principles must be evaluated by some sort of intelligent being to arrive at a conclusion about whether they are true or not, to be interpreted even as a fractal at all.
Fractals utilize the principle of infinity, which is not capable of being encapsulated in a human mind. You can't investigate infinity.
It's not because you cannot capture it visually that you cannot think of infinity. And people who have been doing
of course it is. If you're an empiricist, it is.
People who are thinking about mathematical limits are every day thinking about infinity and thinking about the consequences.
And most of them are Platonists. They're not what you believe.
I don't care about the label you can put on them. The point is,
I care about the label because they don't believe
will be carried by minds. I think this is something actually we agree on. I think it's how you conclude that God is a mind.
Look, you're correct that that the mind can access those things. Like, for example, if I have a notion of a Mandelbrot set, I'm understanding something that exists in what I believe is a real realm of thought or psyche or whatever terms you want to use. So I believe they do have a real independent existence outside of the mind. And my mind can touch on it, but it can't really touch on it. So in my view, this is why we believe in what's called analogy. So there's an analogy between the divine mind and our mind. We can touch it, but we can't fully grasp it. Just in the same way as infinity as a principle or a concept is all throughout mathematics. Look, if I show you a point in space, even Zeno a long time ago in Greek philosophy made this point, I can infinitely divide any section of 2 points in space, infinity, right? So infinity is actually present anywhere. But we don't actually experience or have a clear concept or empirical verification for infinity itself.
But to be clear, this is not what I'm saying. I'm not saying you can experience infinity. I'm saying to even make these divisions, you're going to need some sort of intelligent being or some program being that is able to iterate stuff. That's what I call a mind. I call it a mind in a very large fashion. You're going to have a system of iteration that we can call intelligent.
Right. And I'm saying that if you look at somebody like Roger Penrose, who's done a lot of work in Penrose tiling, and he deals a lot with advanced mathematics. And the reason that he's convinced, for example, that Mandelbrot sets aren't just contained in the human mind is that they weren't able to be demonstrated without a certain level of advanced computer systems that could zoom in to a certain degree, which previously we weren't able to do this. There was an idea that there might be Mandelbrot sets based on patterns in nature, based on outlines on continents, outlines of continents and so forth. But until the computer, it really couldn't be demonstrated. And what I'm saying is that there is an aspect to which, yes, the human mind touches on those things, but they also go far beyond the human mind because they are infinite in many cases. So whether one wants to argue that infinities are actual or not really doesn't matter, because unless we want to say that we're talking nonsense, when we speak of something like zero, when we speak of negative numbers, when we speak of something infinite, we are calling to mind categories that cannot be empirically verified or contained in our mind, and yet in some way they kind of vaguely, familiarly are. And I'm saying that where are they? They're in the divine mind.
Okay. Well, I mean, I agree with you that we shouldn't be stepping on the detail of whether we can conceive of infinity, because it's not my statement, and as you say, it's not so important. This jump that what, Andy?
May I just step in for 1 second? One really big super chat from Monk, $50. He said, "You moved the cam down, but you pulled that desk forward. I suspect fleshlight. Thank you for the $50." And no, I just moved the camera back. It's not going to stop. JF, a lot of people are losing faith in you, pardon the pun, but it is back and forth in the chat right now. Yeah, if you think JF is winning, press 1. If you think Jay is winning, press 2. Also, and I'm going to go through all the super chats eventually. It's just I bring up one super chat and both of you go for 10 minutes, which is great. But let me just do the one big super chat. And then when I have time to step in, there's a lot of smaller ones that were before this that I want to ask. Because a lot of interesting stuff. Seems like we have Jay in the lead, but some JFs. But this is very entertaining, very interesting. Carl's Jr., $50. Thank you for that huge donation. Asks or says, "Gods and religion is the rational mind trying to understand and harness the intuitive mind. The rational mind evolved to serve the intuitive mind and largely does. Its original purpose was to allow the intuitive mind to influence other intuitive minds." What do you think about that statement?
Well, I'd like to make a summary of everything we've talked about and my perception of it. Then we can move on maybe to the question of the divine mind.
Perfect.
So what I see here is that we do have a disagreement up to now. The disagreement is maintained in my view. I've not been convinced that there is such a thing. I think that what Jay is standing for could be called mathematical realism. I don't know if he would agree.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. So I'm not a mathematical realist. This is what's happening. The way I see the world, there are agents. They can hold certain axioms in their head, and they can work out the consequences of these axioms. They can share the information they gather from their own mind through communication. This is where we are in humanity, where people can work out ideas. And it turns out that humans are similar enough and care about similar things enough that we can exchange. And literally everyone will agree that 7 is a prime number from these axioms. It's a form of intersubjective truth to me, and to me that's everything there is. Intersubjective truth, at least in the logical domain and the philosophical domain. What we have are essentially people agreeing on an epistemological contract, where if they agree on the same axioms, they can reach the same conclusion and they can share it. Jay differs, I believe.
Correct. Yeah, I think that it's very untenable to posit that abstract, immaterial, invariant concepts, entities, objects are in any way social conventions. Now, certainly social conventions, I believe, come into play when we talk about the symbolic or semiotic references that stand for those things. We might use the Roman numeral VII to stand for 7 as opposed to the Arabic 7. But we are referring in either case, so there might be variations or relative aspects to the symbols themselves, but what they're referring to is not based on social convention. It's not based on some sort of social construct at all whatsoever. And I know that because the same principles that build bridges in Rome are still used today to build bridges in our world. Now, granted, there are other mathematical systems that get very obtuse and abstract, and like I mentioned, Cantor, and you gave some examples as well. But I think that if we go back even to Plato and Aristotle, who Aristotle actually agreed with Plato on this point, is that it's very problematic to try to locate the identity or the location of number in something like a mind or a brain or a social convention. And that's because the very things that we're talking about don't seem to be able to be changed. We're not at all going to have a different number 7 100 years from now. We're not going to have a different way to, construct a bridge 20 years from now. Conceivably, there could be technological advances, that could make it the way that we build bridges differently, obviously. But the mathematical principles behind those things don't tend to change. I have friends that work at NASA. They do rockets. And so we often talk about mathematical principles. And I'm not saying that this is a proof. I'm just saying this is a testament. My friends that do advanced mathematics, they're often amazed at the symmetry and the intricacy of how all of these logical systems and patterns, and just think about a computer. The principles that a computer operates on, all of these very complex mathematical principles, they're not simply social conventions. They're actually metaphysical principles that I think spill over into the world. And in fact, I don't know how that happens. I think that the divine mind explanation is the best explanation for how that happens. For me, it's one of the strongest proofs for God. I have an essay, Numbers Prove God, where I try to lay this argument out extensively in about 20 pages in a grad paper. So for me, that kind of stuff is some of the most convincing. And I think that when you ask the question, where do we locate these numbers? It's like Plato said a long time ago, if I erase the number 7 on a board, and if I go around and try to wipe out the number 7 from the people of Athens' mind, have I actually gotten rid of the number 7? No. And that's because we seem to feel like intuitively, I would say even a priori, we feel like the number 7 is the number 7, and it's not going to morph into the number 8 when social convention says otherwise. I think to say that numbers are social conventions is really self-refuting.
Okay, I want to jump to the idea of divine mind, but we need to spend a little more time on this because I am being strawmanned here. I am not saying that mathematics is a social convention, that logic is a social convention. I said 2 things. One, you can have axioms in your head. And yes, you can evaluate statements that are true as a consequence of these axioms. This is what I would call logical mathematical truths. And the simple condition for these to be true is that they are consistent or deduced from the initial axioms. I said then that you could communicate with other humans about these truths that you can evaluate for yourself as a working mind you can determine within your mind whether, for example, the existence of points, lines, and circles of Euclid can lead to the truth of triangle and the truth of angles, and everything is found. So I would agree with using the word truth for this if we keep a flag that states this is different truth from empirical truth. Those are truth of consistency. And people can communicate about consistency. They can share axioms. They can share the conclusion of these axioms, and they can each verify for themselves if these things are true. Now, would you be satisfied with this, a form of mathematical coherentism as the definition for truth?
My only problem with that would be is that you seem to say that it's separate from empirical truth, and I would say that you can't separate them from empirical truth. I think they have a both and not an either or relationship, and I can prove that by the fact that in the course of our very debate right now, we're utilizing logical principles. And so this is an empirical phenomenal experience wherein we are seeing both logical principles and numeric principles at work in the process of our conversation.
I'm not necessarily satisfied by the demonstration from conversation, but I would point out that...
you don't think our argument's using logic?
Our arguments are using the processes of logic that are in our brain, yes. But I want to point out cases where the truths that you can find from axioms do not map to the universe. For example, you can come with all sorts of truths from taxicab geometry, but it won't map to a map of the planet because the planet is not a taxicab geometry planet. Or you can make up fictive geometries that do not map to the Euclidean space that we're used to. So that's why I say we keep a distinction between the truths that are true because they are merely mathematically coherent to axioms, and the truths that are true because we observe things in the world that are also true coherently, but they are also true in another way, which is that we have observed them.
Okay, but in our situation, we're utilizing formal and informal logical systems that apply to debate. Every debate utilizes those principles and those systems. And they are, by the way, connected to math as well.
Those are systems of communication, and I'm not convinced that you have a legitimate purpose to be using the fact that we communicate, the fact that we use symbolism to represent our thoughts. I don't think that this constrains our thoughts in any way.
Well, I'm not saying it constrains our thoughts. I'm just saying that humans are constituted that they operate that way in the world. I mean, we utilize symbols all the time. I mean, I'm talking to you through a screen, which is a bunch of pixels, which is a symbol of you, right? I'm not actually talking to you directly. So, this happens all the time. I don't see why that would even be controversial. But there is actually a more complex aspect to this question in linguistic philosophy. If you read somebody like Karl Otto Appel, who's a famous linguistic philosopher, he deals with transcendental arguments in language. And in fact, language is full of transcendental presuppositions. For example, if I say, I believe the tree is red, the sentence itself actually is not just token reference. It actually presupposes things that are metaphysical. It presupposes that there's some coherent notion of a self that is behind the sentence, that sentence actually has some truth value over time, that the beginning words, the subject actually refers to the predicate in the sentence. I mean, sentences themselves are profuse with philosophical and metaphysical assumptions that philosophers have been debating for a long time.
I'm totally fine granting that certain ways we use to speak, they can lead to presuppositions, but I don't agree necessarily that you'll always have the right presupposition. And sure. I will say sometimes there will be alternate projections into the presupposition space on which we may not agree. But I'm totally willing to agree with that. Yes, when I say I see a green tree, it presupposes that I exist. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right, but I is one of these many things that is like a precondition or a transcendental, a self. You can't verify empirically that there is such a thing as a self. The self, for example, you say you are a fan of Hume. Hume, for example, says that the self is just a bundle of impressions. There's no real correlation between the JF and his experiences of yesterday and 10 years ago to the JF of now. It's just an assumption that we engage in for pragmatic value. And I'm saying that I don't think that that's actually a coherent philosophical answer. I mean, we could just
I would agree with your earlier statement. Anyway, I will mean different things in different contexts.
Mm-hmm.
Like it can be what I feel and everything I experience. Does it include my intestine or not? I mean, in certain cases it might, in certain cases it might not.
Sure, but I think the point is just that it's a precondition, and my argument throughout the debate is that there's a whole bunch of things like that. The seemingly immaterial invariant objects like numbers, logic, that these things do, maybe not every system, but that the systems do operate in some way in the world, that we do have some access to notions like infinity that are not empirically verifiable, that we do have notions like the self, which actually makes sense. And since all of these things can't be empirically proven, they're absolutely proven in the fact that they are presupposed in any act of knowledge or cognition. The fact that we're having a conversation, again, assumes things, for example, about meaning, that you can transfer meaning coherently from your head to my head. These are transcendentals, and I think that when you look at all of those transcendentals together, the only way that that world actually makes sense is the kind of world that we see presented in the Bible, the Orthodox Christian conception of who God is.
So it's not because an act of communication can occur between two people where there can be intersubjective agreement. This doesn't mean that the whole rest that they couldn't cover, such as infinity, which is unexpressible in its deployed form, if you will. But infinity refers to stuff that you can do in mathematical axioms. Infinity exists because you can multiply and multiply and multiply. And even if someone cannot picture in his mind infinity, they can certainly picture iterations that would keep going on. They can picture, for example, a computer loop that would, for infinity, times two, times two, times two, times two. And so it's not because the thing is pictured differently in a human mind that the concept is not pictured by the human mind. It is pictured in a form that the human mind can handle. But I will also say that these infinities, they are not necessarily true independent of the human mind. They are still products of the human mind, in that it's a human mind that can imagine these iterated forms of infinity.
But the human mind didn't imagine a Mandelbrot set. It was something discovered.
Didn't imagine what? Sorry?
The human mind didn't imagine a Mandelbrot set. It was something that we thought could be, and then it was actually proven when the computers had the ability to demonstrate that you could, zoom in to.
Well, I just want to specify, when I say human mind, I don't mean the subjective experience of humans. I mean an intelligent agent in the physical universe.
Okay, may I interrupt for a second? All right, so there's a lot of people who've donated some awesome things they want to ask both of you, and sort of just things we can go on. And but this is very intense. The fucking chat is torn.
I'm gonna grab some coffee.
Yeah, I think it will be a relaxed time. Let's look at some super chat. Then we move on to divinity, and how do we get from everything we've discussed to divine?
And if there's anything that you want to respond to, just keep it brief. And then we'll get into that. It's just people are donating their hard-earned money, and I just want to, just read it out. So let's just start here. John, £2. Don't go for a coffee break, Andy. God is watching, which is actually a really bad thing to say, because my coffee's almost done, and I have some on the pot. I swear to God, I'm gonna go in there and grab coffee. I'm gonna pour it in. I wish there was a way I could maybe I'll stream on my phone from another profile so you could see in the box what I'm doing when I walk out of the room. Anyway, Eric Coda, $2. You can make the same argument for God, Jay, but that was way before. Lunchador, 1764, $5. We was Kangs, but now we's mayonnaise. Fisted Wizard, $10. A perfect being wouldn't be perfect without the quality of existence. If existence is not a quality of this being, said being would not be perfect. Therefore, a perfect being must exist by definition. My brain
just for a J.
This is the ontological argument, which I do not adhere to. I actually have a grad paper where I critique the ontological argument, and the problem with the ontological argument, like Kant said, was that it presupposes that existence is a predicate of objects. So only if you have that presupposition can you follow through the argument. And the problem is that modern philosophy questioned whether existence is a predicate of objects. So if you reformulate the ontological argument in a transcendental way, you can make an ontological transcendental argument. But as it stands, it doesn't work.
All right. Tim Radis, $5. if you don't need God or religion to be moral, then why is it clearly evident that people who are godless are immoral, nihilistic, and degenerate? I know a lot of people who don't believe in God and are very moral people. Do any of you want to take a shot at that?
Morality is the output of behavior, and it's a system of valuation where some behaviors are better than others. Of course, you don't need God for this. You can program a computer to do that. Now, the question of what are the values that humans hold, as far as I'm concerned as a biologist, we just prefer stuff like the quanta loop because they're sweet. We prefer sex. We prefer the stuff that are allowing us to survive. You don't need God for this. You don't, in principle, forget about whether you believe in God or not. Think about it. Can you have behavior without God? Yes. You can have things doing stuff. You can have objects deploying behavior. As long as you're in a physical universe, you'll see all sorts of examples of this.
Right. Baya 000 $10. There's some good ones coming up later, but then we'll go back to what you guys were talking about and we'll jump back and forth. But Baya 000 $10. Jay, the naturalist, might say that the mind is a product of the external world and reason is a product of the mind. So why should we not expect reason to be coherent with the outside world?
Well, I think that this, again, is kind of bypassing the actual heart of the argument, which is not that we look and see an external world, but that I made a very specific point about predicating. And what this means is that when I say something of the external world, if I say I say Bill Cosby is black, right? If I say Bill Cosby is black, that's not just vocal cords emitting sounds. I'm actually trying to convey some aspect of truth or meaning that applies to objects in the external world. And the problem with language and linguistic philosophy, as Plato asked a long time ago, is how can you actually predicate about things in the external world if the external world is in perpetual flux? You need some grounding, some way to have stability to say that thing is or is not. And so this basic philosophical question, I think, is solved when we don't believe that everything is a product of perpetual flux. We actually have things like minds, we have soul, we have consciousness, and there are things like God who made us that way, that we can image, our mind images the divine mind, and we can learn about the world and do things in the world because God does.
All right. Just a few more. AJ, $2. Jay and JF are both great. Bull Rock, $5. 2 coffees for you guys again. Stay strong. Tim Radis, $2. Can we all just agree that JF uses too much gel? Shots fired. What do you think?
I use the exact good amount of gel as determined by the objective truth of amount of gel requirements.
All right, gentleman bystander, $5.
He uses mousse. He uses the mousse.
The mousse, Alberto, for men. A relativity has heretofore not been a demonstrably observable phenomena. JF, come on, you're better than this.
What was the beginning of the sentence? I missed it.
Here. I'm just gonna copy and paste this because it's too highbrow for me.
Relativity has heretofore not been a demonstrably observable phenomena. JF, come on, you're better than this. You might want to go look at the trajectory of Mercury.
That was my thing I was going to say right after.
I put my fedora on for all the fedora atheists.
Someone said Ghidorah. Hey, at least I'm honest that I couldn't fucking handle that question. Gentlemen, bystander, $2. Y'all need Jesus. Avow Liberty responds with $2. I don't need, in 3 parentheses, Jesus. And last one, 4 now. Vibration Rising, $30. Thank you so much. Jay is presenting the correct view on theism, in my view. This stream is fire. Here's an interesting one before we get into it. Adri Trofminko, $5. I don't know at what point this is being read, but JF is totally losing the debate. He is not philosophically trained. Ooh.
We'll see that.
Oh, shit. All right, go ahead. You were talking about divinity. was the next part of your subject.
I feel that so much has been said. It's good that we would both summarize our position at this point and then move on to divine stuff.
Okay. I'm going to grab coffee because mine is empty. Okay. I swear to God, people, I'm not going to masturbate. Okay? Right. Until Count Dankula is... You don't understand, Jay. This has been a big fucking problem the last few days.
No, I saw your Twitter.
Okay. Oh, shit. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'll be back in 2.5 seconds. Okay.
So what we've had at the beginning of the debate, in my view, is Jay is trying to commit me to stuff that I don't commit to. I don't commit to universal truths. I don't commit to universal principles. I'm a being in the world. I observe other beings. We can agree on certain principles. And in fact, we agree on most. That's why science can work. Everyone agrees with the definition of arithmetic. That's why we all agree that 7 is a prime number. But there are alternative systems of thought that we've just discarded because they were useless. It doesn't make our current systems of thought universally true. What is true is in the sense of coherentism. So when I accept axiom 1, 2, 3, then consequences 3, 4, 5 happen. They can be demonstrated as being deducible, and I accept this definition of truth. But this is a definition of truth where things remain coherent in a system where some axiom has been taken. Now, moving on to the next part, and I will hear first Jay's position on everything that we've said, but moving on to the next part, what I want to know is, acknowledging the fact that mathematics are true in that way, how does that lead to God? And this will be the interesting thing in the second part of the debate.
Okay, yeah. In summary, JF has said, I think, that he doesn't commit to universal truths. I don't deny that JF doesn't want to commit to universal truths, but I think that there's when you study logic or if you study epistemology, what happens is that you get into things that entail other things. And so we speak of necessary entailment. And so I think that what JF has missed is that I'm not trying to force him into some trick. I'm actually saying that I believe the things that I'm critiquing in his position, they literally logically necessarily lead to these other things. For example, it's impossible to not have a universal truth claim in the midst of the truth claims that JF was making earlier. I think I tried to hammer that home. I still think that my point on that stands. And the fact that JF doesn't want to have a universal truth claim is different from the question of whether, in fact, formally speaking, his arguments were actually universal truth claims by definition in formal epistemological parlance. Secondly, I would say that when we speak of epistemology tends to talk about 3 different dominant theories when it comes to how we justify our beliefs. So we speak of justified true beliefs, and usually this is done in either a correspondence theory, which is the idea that our thoughts or our symbols or our words or token speech or whatever, that it actually corresponds to something in the external world. That's one theory. There's also the coherence theory, which we talked about, which is the idea that really justifying a belief is whether or not in our web of beliefs or system of thought, the aspects are all coherent. And then finally, the other dominant school is pragmatism, which is just the idea that if our speech and our thought works in the world, then who cares about these other things? My position, I would say that all 3 of these have an aspect which is partially true. I don't think any one of them, in other words, if you just have the theoretical aspect, then you never actually touch the here and the now. You lose the empirical, practical, phenomenal experience of the world. If you just have a correspondence, then you miss out on the theoria or the theory aspect of the view. And if we just have pragmatism, I think we miss out on the other 2. So I think that all 3 of these have an aspect of truth. There is some truth to pragmatism, there is some truth to correspondence, and there is some truth to coherence theory, all of which I believe work together. So I think JF, in my view, errs on being kind of forced in his thinking over into the pragmatic perspective on most things, as far as I understand his worldview. And I find that to be not necessarily I mean, I understand, I think, his thought process, but I think that it's really a limiting and contradictory position, because at the same time, we also want to do a lot of things that require theory. And theory is not, in my view, a social convention.
May I add just one thing before you hop into divinity? Because there's a really good question, super chat, that came in recently from Swordfish. It's a $20 one there, the orange one. It says, Jay, what's the purpose of prayer in this phenomenon you are describing? Also have a blessed Lent. Yeah, what's the purpose of prayer?
Well, simply put, I would just say that if my worldview is true, if the Bible is true, then the explanations for things like that fit within my worldview. So God has created a world in which we can have a relationship with him. We can petition him, and we can actually affect change in the world through divine aid. And I think that the world actually has a purpose, a telos, and that it's actually intended to be renovated and changed universally in a cosmic sense. The writings of St. Maximus the Confessor, who's dealt a lot with the arguments that I'm talking about in terms of archetypes and patterns and principles. And so the purpose of prayer is actually to be like God, and God made us to be like him and to participate in what we call theosis, or deification.
Let me ask you one thing then, because this was a big reason why I stopped believing when I was younger, because I was a very firm believer up to about 14, 15, and I became I said out loud that I was an atheist at 18, or agnostic, but I'd say more atheist. I believe in energy and all that bullshit, but not a deity who's controlling, who makes things, who does this, who does that. I believe that if there is a higher power, it's something that we can't understand, and it'd be more of an energy thing than a conscious deity doing things. Anyway, when I was 14, my grandma got cancer, and I prayed for her every single night for about 3 months. I did the three main prayers, Our Father, Hail Mary, and Guardian Angel. I did that every single night for 3 months, and then she still died. And then that was when I looked at my parents, and that was the first click in my brain to be like, what was the fucking point? What was the point of praying? What was the point of asking for anything if she was going to die anyway?
Well, I would say that, again, how we understand ethics and the problem of evil. So I think what you're asking is really just kind of a variation on the problem of evil. Why would a just God allow this kind of a thing to happen? And excuse me. And I'm saying that, in my view, there's nothing incoherent or contradictory about God not revealing to man everything that he has planned. So we don't know. I mean, even in the human realm, we don't know all of the reasons for why this happened, or this person did this, or, somebody did something wrong to you. You don't necessarily know all the reasons why. So just because we don't have an immediate explanation of everything, it really doesn't function, I don't think, as a proof or disproof of anything. I mean, any view that you have, you're going to be limited in your knowledge and not have an explanation for things. So,
but if I had prayed and then she had survived, wouldn't that in my brain be like, oh, it's because I was praying is the reason she was she's lived, was because I prayed and God helped her? Couldn't the coincidence of people surviving once someone prays for them make the person more of a believer? Isn't it just like a flip of a coin at that point?
I see what you're saying.
What's the point of praying if she would have survived or died regardless of my prayer?
Right. Well, I would definitely agree with you that if somebody tries to base their reasoning for believing in God and simply because I prayed and events seem to correspond with what I prayed for, that's not the best reason for believing in something. I mean, I would agree with you that that's not a great apologetic proof or basis for belief in God. But I think that, again, it's not like the argument for theism is just based on a coincidence between a prayer and what you want to happen. I mean, we believe that God is providential. All things happen for a reason. We don't always know those reasons. So really that doesn't prove or disprove anything. So in other words, I'm agreeing with you that it may not be a good argument for belief in God, because I mean, I might convince myself that Lucifer exists, and that I might say, If I, get laid tomorrow night, and then I know that Lucifer exists, right? I mean, that would be a kind of arbitrary construct that doesn't everybody would agree, I think, doesn't necessarily prove that Lucifer exists, right? So in the same way, I agree with you that's not a great argument, but that really has nothing to do with the truth or falsity of the worldview as a whole. It really depends on the paradigm from which we interpret those kinds of experiences.
Mm-hmm. And I want to say to the chat, to people who are like, fuck you, Andy, you lost. Oh, Andy, as a basic. I can't ask a fucking question, so I have to experience what I experienced and go, well, fucking whatever, because the people in a fucking chat room, fuck off. So I'm asking questions. We're talking about something that no one has seen before. That you have to have faith to have, that you have to believe, that you have to think, that you have to have, you know what I mean? There's so much variables to believing in a deity that we can't see. I ask a question and I lost because you already believe. What if you say, oh, fuck you, and all this shit makes me just fucking pull further away and go, well, fuck you guys. Sorry.
All right, so there was a key thing that Jay has said, and this is very alarming to me because it seems like it's not necessarily contradictory, but certainly he has lowered this threshold for demonstration, and I'm going to hold him accountable on that. Jay, 2 times in this stream said, if God exists. However, Jay is claiming, let's be clear about what the transcendental argument is. The transcendental argument is that there is no other possibility than the fact that God exists. And his claim today is that he cannot even conceive of a world, of our world as existing without God existing. Jay, is that correct?
There's a difference. I mean, I believe that we can speak hypothetically. When I say if the Bible is true and if God exists, I'm just saying that the evidence that Andy was trying to adduce there is really something that will be interpreted in the midst of our paradigms as a whole. If I have a naturalistic paradigm, then I'm going to say that, no, prayer is stupid, it doesn't make any sense, and it's just a coincidence. But if I have...
More than the context of your conversation with Andy, because you said it earlier on the stream too, you said if God exists... Right. A, B, C. You don't believe that God cannot exist.
Right, but that's because I'm speaking hypothetically, comparing one paradigm or system to another.
So just to be clear, as we enter that part...
Just real fast. I'm sorry, I did quit smoking, masturbating, and doing all this stuff all in the span of like a week. So if I'm a little bit on edge and I start yelling... I apologize. I was in traffic earlier and I had a meltdown in traffic. So I'm a little bit on edge. I apologize. I didn't mean to snap. Sorry, guys. All right.
Andy, so as we enter this last part, it's important to remember that you are claiming it's impossible for God not to exist in our universe. Right. And at the same time, you just recognize, you almost recognize the possibility of someone like me existing and being consistent with his own existence and the world. When you said Jeff has been pushed in a pragmatic corner, and you said, I understand that he could be there. Now, we have to determine what is your argument for proving a divine God, a divine force in this world based on everything I've acknowledged up to now. Right now, I've acknowledged that I'm a biological being. I exist in the world. I have a brain. This brain evolved. That's my view, but let's not talk about this. This brain is capable of digging into infinity by infinitely dividing or infinitely multiplying. We are not at a point where there is a justifiable belief in God. So what is your argument on that? And it should be an argument to me that leaves no place for a possibility even that the world could exist without God.
Okay. Two things to respond to that. My first statement would be that when you discuss the things that you see as qualities of your life and your worldview and your perspective, I'm saying that it's full of things that you may not want to admit, but I believe are necessarily entailed by your presuppositions, by your worldview. So you believe that you exist. You believe in kind of simple things that you're distinct from the external world. I mean, there's a lot of religions and belief systems out there, and maybe even some evolutionary positions that are monistic, and that they would say everything is basically just one. And so particularity or identity for some of those people would be illusory. I'm not saying you say that, but I'm saying that that's just one example of a presupposition that you have that JF is distinct from Andy and from the rest of the world, right? That you can't necessarily empirically verify without looking at the absurdities of where that would lead to if you affirmed it. So that's why I would say that's a kind of preconditioned, kind of axiomatic, basic level belief that you have. And I would share it with you. I agree. We're different, distinct from the world. We are part of the world. We do have a biological aspect to our being. But I think that when you publish your book, when your book comes out, when you make your arguments, when you copyright your book, you want credit for your argumentation, for what you did, for your work, and for what you discovered. And I think that that presupposes that you see yourself as having a self, an identity over time, a meaning that transcends just chaotic chemical forces. And if there is a self, if there is logic and reason and these powers that you have, I think that we look to the world for explanations for that. And there's all kinds of different explanations. There's the naturalistic evolutionary perspective. There's different religious perspectives, all these different options out there. But ultimately, I believe they all kind of boil down to a few different options of things like monism or dualism. And so we have a few basic starting point options that we can either go in different directions. And I think that the worldview that I have as a whole doesn't just account for or kind of give an explanation of how there could be mathematical entities. I'm saying that all of these things, such as the principle of induction and how science works, regularity in nature, that science works in a logical, orderly fashion, that there is such a thing as a self, and that man has rights and dignity based on the fact that he's made in the image of God, that there is the reason to believe that the past had meaning and that we can recall it, and that truth and identity and objects persist over time, and that's how we can have meaningful conversation and interaction. I'm saying that all of these kinds of things, not just one thing, not one little weird point over here, obscure thing about math. I'm saying that when you look at this totality picture, there's all of this web of presuppositions and assumptions that we have about the world, and that the world will have this regularity and that we can live and operate in this kind of a world. I'm saying that the theistic position that I hold to can give an account for this. It can't give an account for every single thing. We are humans. We're finite. We're still going to be learning new facts. We can, change aspects of our worldview based on new information. But I'm saying I don't think we're ever going to lose these basic assumptions or basic presuppositions, because if we did, they would be destructive to rationality and reason and coherence across the board, totally. So my argument is, on the one hand, that anti-theism presupposes theism. So to answer the second part of your question, how do I speculate or hypothetically speak of a world in which God doesn't exist? My argument, actually, JF, is that you don't really consistently believe that God doesn't exist, because on the one hand, you do affirm it, but on the other hand, you operate as if all of these things that I'm saying are true, as if the world operates in this theistic way. But you also want to simultaneously have your cake and eat it too, and not have all the theistic stuff, but retain all of the things that make sense on a theistic worldview. So that's the transcendental argument in essence.
So I'm going to explain to you how I can exist without God, and you're going to explain to me what is in there necessarily involving God. So I'm a creature. I've evolved from other creature. I think that you said last time that you agreed that evolution as a theory, the theoretical process of evolution, can occur in replicators in principle, right?
If you mean the transmutation of one species to another, I don't believe that. But if you mean that there are adaptations to environments, sure.
Okay, so I'm the product of a replicator. I've adapted to my environment. It has made me in a certain way. It has made me like to observe the world. It has created eyes, cameras. It has created ears so I could hear the world. All of these things help me to survive in the world. Among the characteristics of my brain that have evolved, some of them include logical processes, which at first may have been arbitrary, but obviously some logical processes will be better than others at recognizing the world, at developing beliefs that will help my babies, at surviving. And so I have these logical processes, I act by them. What in this life, where I eat a cantaloupe, where I talk to people who are just like me and we exchange, what in this life necessarily involves a God?
The claim that you just made that logic doesn't evolve is itself problematic. Or excuse me, you said that logic evolved. Excuse me. I'm saying that is a problem because logic doesn't evolve. There's no evidence that it evolved. And in fact, it's the kind of thing that's immaterial and invariant that is not like flux matter. But
you're trying to bring it on the ground of evidence. I'm talking to you about the transcendental argument you're making, and for it to be true, it needs to be necessary that God exists. Do you agree with this statement?
Yes, and I'm saying that
so you're saying you cannot picture of a creature in this world that's capable of logical processing without God existing? I cannot.
Yes, because it makes no sense to say logic is just merely an evolutionary product, because by definition, what logic is, I think that most people agree that it's an invariant abstract process or series of laws or principles, and you don't get immaterial invariant principles from flux matter.
So you could not get a bunch of matter together that would process information mathematically, such as make additions or subtraction or divisions. You think you cannot have this without God being there?
Right, because the laws of logic are not material.
Well, they can be implemented in a material device.
But the laws themselves are not material.
A device can perform logical processing.
Right, but the laws themselves are not material.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter. If you want to imagine
that's the heart of the question.
Existing independently, the computer, it processes logical information and it exists in the physical world. There's nothing that penetrates the computer from outside. When it does a calculation, it works on its own. And if the computer had not been created by a human and was to exist somewhere in the universe out of random, you would recognize that there is such a thing as an arrangement of matter that can perform logical processing.
No, I'm saying that itself proves that laws are not material, because if they were, they could evolve into the opposite of themselves, and they don't. So if you believe that laws are material and they're part of the evolutionary process, then you must also believe that the evolutionary process is something that can evolve into the opposite of itself, which is self-repeating.
I don't believe that laws are material. I believe that laws are principles that we can hold in our brain and that we can judge a computer by this law and say whether the computer respects a certain form of logic or another. But you're recognizing that a machine could perform the operations that would satisfy a logical evaluator that would look at it and say, yes, that is true, and that this machine could exist in the physical world independent of any God.
No, I'm saying that it makes no sense to arbitrarily do special pleading, which is a fallacy, to say that I'm not going to accept a meta level question about what a law of logic is. I'm just going to use laws of logic in the world, and I don't want to deal with the question of whether they have any kind of independent existence. And I'm saying that I can prove that they have an independent existence by the fact of the absurdity of saying that they are part of an evolutionary process.
So that's a smokescreen. You are refusing to engage with the question of whether a machine can exist independent of your God, when in fact your argument relies on the very necessity of your God for these logical processes to be made.
Can a machine exist independent of God, is your question?
Yep. A machine that would process 2 + 2 = 4 and 4 + 4 = 8.
I mean, it's a nonsense question, because you're asking me to deny my worldview to say, could there be a machine that does these processes?
But CJ, I'm just like you, and just like you don't care what I think earlier, you said, oh, I don't care what can come out of your brain. I care about the truth. I don't care about whether you can picture it or not. I'm asking you to be honest with yourself once in this debate and think about this machine. Does it exist or not? Can it exist or not?
Right. My point earlier was not to question your intellectual honesty in a moral sense. I was trying to point out what I saw as a contradiction. So I'm not trying to avoid the question. I'm simply saying that I don't think the question makes sense. If I believe that God exists, then it's impossible for me to conceive of a world where there's atheistic computers that just do math functions. Like there's the atheist Texas Instruments world where the I mean,
so you just acknowledged that you cannot conceive of it, and you don't want to conceive of it because you know very well that if a computer was out there out of the random arrangement of matter and was to perform calculations that if a human was to look at would judge are logical, it would prove that something can exist that processes logic without God. And you know that your argument relies on this machine not existing.
This is probably the most bizarre non-empirical atheist argument I've ever heard. So because you have no evidence or proof of this kind of thing or this kind of world where
because your argument does not rely on evidence. Your argument of transcendentiality relies on the fact that it's impossible for machines to exist
You're wrong about that not being an evidence. It is an evidence. It's a logical argument, just like Gödel's arguments are logical arguments. It's a logical form.
That's not what I said. What I'm saying is your argument of transcendentiality requires that God is necessary for people to exist in the state that they are, and you claim that and you state that the state that they are, which justifies this necessity, is the fact that they can process logic. And you refuse right now to engage with the theoretical machine example because you know very well that the minute you answer yes to my question, your entire transcendental argument falls. Jay, can you picture a fictive machine that would process logic and give the right answers, even if it doesn't know anything about the laws of logic?
No, I mean, this is a laughable argument. I understand that you're trying to sort of turn the transcendental argument around, but I'm saying that it's a misunderstanding of what the transcendental argument is, because you seem to think that throughout the debate, because we can conceive of something, that in some way that means that it's possible or exists. And there are all kinds of things that we can conceive of that are not possible and don't exist. So I literally don't understand what the argument is trying to say. It's not I'm not trying to avoid something.
Okay. I'm trying to dismantle your assumption that because you observe people processing logic, then God exists. God necessarily exists. That's your argument.
That's not the argument. The argument is not because I observe people processing logic. The argument is that there are all kinds of things about not just logic, but also mathematics and other transcendental categories that cannot be empirically verified.
I'm going to do them one by one, but we start with logic. You claim that logic is part of the set of things that justifies the existence of God as a necessity.
Right.
And now I'm asking you, can you picture a computer that has the right responses to logical processing, but that exists in a universe where there's no God?
No.
Why?
Because it's incoherent and contradictory.
What's incoherent and contradictory in the fact that
number one, there's no evidence for this thing. There's no evidence for this universe.
Back to the evidence. I didn't ask if this computer actually existed. I asked in principle if it can exist.
Believe in things for which you have no evidence.
Absolutely. Because we are not talking about the real world. We're talking about your transcendental argument, which is a denial of that very possibility.
It applies to the real world.
The transcendental argument is a denial that it's even possible that there would be machines that would process logic, that logic could be performed by a machine or a computer. You admitted that earlier. You said, I admit that it is a necessary condition that God exists for any sort of logical operations to be made.
To be possible, not to be made, to be possible.
Okay, so there can be machines.
That's what a precondition is.
So there can be machines that perform logical operations that are in line with the laws of logic.
Okay, the reason this doesn't work is because every reference that you have as an individual to machines or to logic or to anything like that you're using in this example, they come from this world. And they're necessarily conditioned by their existence in this world.
I'm using the word machine to communicate it to you. But can you picture atoms existing without any humans knowing about the term atom?
Can I picture atoms existing without humans knowing of the existence of atoms?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so I'm asking you to make the same thing about the machine. Forget that I'm calling it a machine. Forget that we have a concept of it. Can you agree that there are arrangements of matter that can output stuff that is logically true while it isn't guided by God?
No.
So you're denying that a computer could exist in a physical universe without being guided by God.
Without there being a worldview in which it's possible to make computers and have logic and so forth. I mean, where's this computer coming from?
This computer could be arranged by a bunch of flesh processing.
I mean, isn't this interesting? This is what the atheist has to fall back on: is this most absurd, hypothetical, imagined worldview, and that's because really the whole position is absurd and imagined. I mean, I'm arguing a very specific thing about transcendentals in this world.
The machine I'm talking to you about are human beings. It's not an absurd world. The world I'm talking about
is a paradigm assumption that you think humans are merely biological machines.
Yep. Do you have evidence that I'm made of anything else than an atom, than a set of molecules?
This is ridiculous. You believe you wrote your book. So your book was the work of JF and JF's mind, right? It wasn't the process of a determined machine, right?
It was the process of a determined machine. It was the process of the neurons in my mind.
You didn't have, and you're not making your own arguments right now. They're just a chemical determined process.
Absolutely.
So you're not making arguments. Thank you. I've won the debate.
All right. Bye.
No, I'm saying that if you serious?
No, but I told you at the beginning, I'm just a monkey-like creature with a mouth and a brain, with a quanta loop to eat it and other human beings to exchange with. I didn't claim anything else. And your problem is that you cannot debunk this version of
I just debunked it.
You cannot prove that it's impossible.
I just debunked it by the fact that you come to the debate and you make arguments acting like they're from your mind and you freely do it, and you just said that you are a determined machine. That's self-contradictory.
Okay, this is important. I'm not determined low IQ interventions. Andy, so you shut the fuck up for 1 minute.
Okay, fine. Fuck, man.
So
all right.
This is a classical argument of the form of Stéphane Molyneux, which is you engage in discussion, therefore you accept all the rules of discussion. I didn't. I don't. I'm just a human being. I emit noise. There are other beings. They interpret this noise based on their own rules. Andy, you can go ahead.
Why do you have to be a dick like that? I was going to ask one question that was part of this.
I was kidding, Andy.
No, that pissed me off, dude.
I'm sorry, Andy. I was kidding.
Just because you're triggered, you can't fucking just go.
Hey, I was not actually triggered. I love you, Andy.
Can I reply?
Okay, I wanted to ask one thing. I wanted to clarify. When JF, what he's saying is, like, have you proved that he could not exist without God? Meaning him being a monkey, eating a cantaloupe, right? Can he not just exist like that without there being a God? Have you proved that there is a God for JF to be sitting there eating a cantaloupe?
So the argument is that is self-refuting and contradictory as a position. And no, my argument has nothing to do with Stéphane Molyneux. I don't follow Stéphane Molyneux, so I don't even know what his kind of.
So you don't know that it does have to do with it.
With Molyneux?
Yeah, it's the same form of argument. Molyneux proves moral realism using that strategy. He says, well, as soon as you engage in discussion, you want to share some things that are meaningful, therefore meaning exists, therefore blah, 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 and he moves on to moral realism. The fact that I engage in this discussion does not commit me to any structure in your mind. I don't care. I'm not bound by your rules and your interpretation of what this discussion is.
You're bound by objective rules of logic and debate. If you're not bound by objective rules of logic, then there's no debate.
Why can't me just sitting here, I was born and I exist, why can't I just be doing this without God? Like, are you saying God
because on the one hand, you guys want libertarian freedom in your socio-political sphere, and on the other hand, you're saying that you're a determined machine. So JF, your book is not your book. It's just a random process of determining chemicals. It's not,
right.
you don't deserve any credit for that. And I'm saying listen, on my view, you do deserve credit for that because you have the ability to reason, you have a soul, you have a self, you have a will. There is freedom.
So let's move to this subject because you mentioned it in the introduction, and it's true that we've skipped it totally. This idea that I had it noted here. You're saying that. Can you repeat what you just said? It is that the fact that I exist and that I write books.
This is sometimes called the naturalist fallacy or the determinist fallacy. And it's the idea that on the one hand, a lot of times the naturalist wants to have a kind of biologicized mechanistic view of the world, but they also want to have the other extreme irrational contradiction of total libertarian freedom. And these two views are totally incommensurable. They don't mix. And that's what I'm saying is a contradiction. Okay. You want both of those things. So your book is...
The fact that I engage on the public space as a libertarian would prove that I believe in morals, in objective morals.
No. It presupposes that you believe in metaphysical concepts like freedom, or that you are a self that deserves credit for your work.
No, I don't believe in metaphysical concepts like freedom. When I argue on the public space, I use words freedom. I descend from monkeys who didn't want to have other monkeys control their testicles. And in human societies, we've evolved to develop language. We're able to understand concepts that other people are talking about. We're able to agree on a common concept. The concept of freedom is not a universal concept. It is simply the fact that we consider that our actions in the world can be interfered by others or not. There's no statement that...
I don't think that's coherent. That's my argument. I understand what you're saying.
Well, let me complete my argument because I want to show you how this is not incoherent.
Okay.
So there are other machines around me that could stop my arm movement as I make an arm movement. When I say I am for freedom, I'm not saying everyone should be for freedom. I'm not saying it's a desirable state for every possible creature and it's an objective truth. All I'm saying is I'm trying to convince the monkeys around me not to block my arm movements because I know that they have genetic interests that are different from mine. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, it's understandable that I've evolved to send that kind of signals. I'm just telling to the other, don't invade on my liberties because I want to reproduce. If I didn't do that, what probably happened is that there were people not discussing stuff in human societies, not able to interact through language or not able to tell others to shut up when it's time to shut up. These people were outbreeded. And so today what we have is people who care about what others will do and who care to protect themselves from the actions of others. There's no inconsistency in what I've just stated.
Of course there is.
I just want to say one thing. Thank you to Prax Girl for the huge donation, $100. And she wrote, "Oh, JF, totally wrecked."
I'm not wrecked because that $100 is coming in my pocket, lady. No, but yeah, what is inconsistent in the picture I've just made?
So I think that's a great example of what I've seen consistently through the debate is the I don't want there to be anything metaphysical. And this is why in the history of Western thought, in the history of Enlightenment thought, and then into the atheistic philosophers and so forth, Hume and Kant, the reason that they started going away from metaphysics is because they're problematic. It's difficult to talk about rights, to talk about the notion of freedom, and on the one hand say, I don't want anything metaphysically related to that, but I also want this to be something that I really possess. I don't want to have any metaphysical conception of what a self is or what my mind is and its work and its products, and that I should receive the money for the book that I write. But at the same time, I also hold on my worldview that I don't believe in any metaphysical principles or truths, no absolutes, no universals, and maybe freedom is not for everybody else, but I'm also just a biological machine. So in other words, just because you want to say, I don't care about anybody else's universal relations to these principles, I just want these for myself. Again, it's just like earlier in the debate about epistemology. When you study logic and epistemology, it's not about what you want or don't want or accept or don't accept, because these are principles that are objective. and you said, I don't accept the logical rules and principles that you bring to the debate. I mean, if that's the case, then there is no debate. I mean, I'm not being mean to you. I'm saying that I don't see how we could engage in a debate if
no,
there's
and we
not.
can see this is exactly where Molyneux reaches. This is exactly the form of his argument, where he doesn't want to engage with a moral nihilist because he knows very well that the existence of a single moral nihilist in this world is sufficient to prove that there's no universal truth about morality.
Okay, but JF, if you say there's no universal truth about morality, that's a universal claim.
It's a universal claim, but it's not a universal moral claim. I'm not saying there is a way we should act. No, it's a statement of fact about possibilities.
If you make a truth claim, and by the way, earlier you said there are no universal truth claims. Now you said there is.
It is a universal truth claim within a local physical system, which is my brain.
That makes no sense.
If you kill all human beings tomorrow, this truth does not exist anymore.
I don't think you know what a universal claim is or what these ideas are in epistemology. They're not even.
Well, you keep saying that throughout the debate. I don't think you know. I don't think you read. I don't think you did that. If you had any argument to convince me that there is one thing that's wrong in my vision of the world, you would state it. You wouldn't send me to your books.
I've stated about 20 times that you keep making universal claims and saying they're not universal, but they're universal. That's a contradiction.
I didn't see a single universal claim in that discussion.
You just said right now. You just said there are no universal truths, and that's universally. You just said it was.
No. These are not universal in the way you mean it. They are universal in the sense that they cover everything that we could agree on that we're talking about in this discussion. But there can be another JF on another planet thinking differently, and there would be no objective way by which he's wrong and I'm right, or I'm wrong and he's right. The moral truth would need to be determined by a behavior being objectively better, objectively true. So there's no such standard because people can have their axis of value among many spaces, which can lead to disagreement and legitimate disagreements.
When you say there's no such standard is a universal claim.
There's no such standard that you've been giving me in that conversation.
I just gave it to you. You just said there's no such standard. You're relying on a universal.
I changed my sentence. There is no such standard that you can provide me that would be objectively true.
Well, on your view, you just said that that's objectively true.
This is not a moral truth. Tell me that there's something.
By the way, it is. By the way, it is.
Bad or good objectively. What is
it? Actually, anytime you make a truth claim, you're also presupposing that it has a logical force that people should accept it.
No, that's in your mind.
No, it's not. That's the whole. If that wasn't true, then we couldn't have a debate. If we're not bound to, so we're not bound to truth. Okay, then
not bound to truth. People self-deceive every day in this world.
Is it true that we're not bound to truth?
It's true within the conversation that we're having, within the people that I know. I've seen some people that are not
universally true. It's just true right now.
It's not universally true.
Tomorrow.
There is a planet in which everyone is bound to truth. There's a planet in which some people are bound to truth.
And what you just said,
we're on planet Earth, and I know that there are people who
so your worldview is simultaneously total nonsense and total rationality, and that's what I'm saying is the contradiction.
Total nonsense. What is nonsense in the fact that I'm a biological creature? I have an opinion on the world. I gather facts from what I see using the cameras that nature gave me. What's contradictory in that? What's nonsense?
Everything that we just went over with universal claims. That doesn't comport with all of your other claims about how there's all of these other possible worlds where all of that is false. And in fact, it could be tomorrow. Everything that you said today could be false tomorrow.
But do you agree that that a universal claim should be true in the alternative worlds I'm suggesting?
I don't even have to go to alternative worlds. All I have to do is look at what you're saying about this world now. And you're saying
if there was an alternative world where your claim of universal,
we're not arguing that world. We're arguing this world where you're making universal.
Because you're making a claim that universal truths exist, and now you're refusing.
No, you made that claim, and I'm saying you're contradicting yourself.
I haven't
rewind about 5 minutes where you said it's a universal truth claim, and then you said, but it doesn't.
Give me 1 sec. Just 1 second, guys. I mean, keep going, but just give me 1 sec.
Okay, well, keep going and give me one
You said
sec.
it was a universal truth claim, but you're not bound to it. That's what you said.
Yeah, I'm changing my phrasing. It's a universal
That's
claim.
because you were wrong and you contradicted yourself.
All right, I'm withdrawing this sentence if I've said it. What I meant is that it is true as far as I can tell in my world. And you know that I've always told you that everything that comes out of my mouth is a local truth that I could evaluate.
Everything is a universal claim by definition. It doesn't matter. I already showed you earlier in the debate that it doesn't matter that a single individual says something. That has nothing to do with whether a claim is universal or particular.
All right, Andy. I think we're done.
Hello?
Yeah,
well, I don't think we don't have to get angry. There's no need. There's no need to get mad or anything. I mean, I think that
there's just you keep thinking that I make universal claims, and the way you mean universal, I would never state it that way.
I understand what you're saying.
I'm an agent that acquires information in the world, and when I make truth claims, it's me speaking.
I understand.
We can agree on some claims.
I understand that you're saying that it's just me and it's not universal. That's what you're wanting the position to be, and I'm just saying that I don't think it works.
And here's the problem: we're all individuals, and so when I'm being, I would say, non-condescending in my claims, when I say I could be wrong, when I say the truth claims that I make, they may be wrong for someone else, they may be true for someone else. The fact is that you are bound by the same limitations that I'm bound. You're just not recognizing it. You want to claim that you have access to a universal truth. I don't claim that. And you've not proven to me why it is that you would have superiority over my position.
Well, I think that I'm not trying to claim superiority in the sense of that I have direct access to something like infallibility or something like that. Although I think that in terms of epistemology, there are kind of levels of belief and levels of certainty. I think most people would agree to this, that there's different kinds of truth claims, different levels of certainty. But what I hear from you is a position that on the one hand, again, this has been my argument the whole time, is that the position wants to have certainty, but it also wants to deny universality. And again, it doesn't, in epistemology, it has, or even in logic, when you make a universal claim, it's not connected to the fact that you're making it as an individual. I mean,
didn't claim certainty. That's the problem. I didn't claim that. And you say I claimed this.
You did, because anytime you make a statement like the idea that that something is true for me, if you said something like that, that's still a claim of certainty.
No. It's a claim of what I know right now.
Okay, so nothing is certain, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, is it certain that nothing is certain? That's the point. You have to have it. Yes, that is the argument. I know you don't like it. It's annoying, but that's the point. There has to be some point at which you have a universal claim to start.
Yeah, I could be wrong about that very statement. I could be wrong about that nothing is certain.
Actually,
I could be wrong.
No, you can't, because that's it's a contradictory claim.
No, I could be wrong when I said that nothing is certain. There might be things that are certain. All I can tell you is what my brain can perceive from this world, and I have the cogito of Descartes in my mind, and I try to say, okay, well, not everything is certain, because everything can be questioned. I could be in a universe wrapped by a computer. I could be a brain in a vat. I mean, all you can get from me is what I gathered from this world, and there's no contradiction in saying, no, I'm not sure about anything.
Okay, but the claim nothing is certain is a universal truth claim.
The claim nothing, no, because someone could be certain of everything. I can picture someone. What do you mean by universal? That's probably where we
okay.
What do you mean by universal truth claim?
Well, this is what I've been saying the whole time, is that if you study logic, if you study epistemology, I'm not trying to be condescending. I'm not trying to be a dick. I'm just
define it.
Define a universal claim. Well, logic
what
usually
is a universal
says
truth claim
that applies at all times, and sometimes they add the proviso in all possible worlds, but that depends upon your metaphysics.
Okay, well, my claims are not universal claims.
Okay.
They don't apply in all possible worlds.
Right, but that depends on metaphysical presuppositions. So regardless of whether there are or not other possible worlds for this world, when you say something like nothing is true or nothing is certain, that is a universal claim.
No, it is a claim that I make as a part of the local universe and other universes.
There's no such thing as this invented local universe that you keep talking about.
Yes, there's what I can observe, and then there's possible worlds that I cannot observe. And when we make claims in conversational interactions like this, what we make are claims that we think apply to the largest extent of what we can observe.
Again, the idea of what a universal claim. If I said that all men are men, okay, this is a universal a priori claim, right? It's self-evident. It's true by definition. If I say
it's actually not true by today's world.
Well, that's true. If you're talking about social justice warriors or something like that, yeah. But again, I think we're just going to have to disagree over what a universal claim is. I don't think it's that controversial. I mean, you can reject these ideas and these logical principles, but I think that that's self-refuting, and that actually just shows of where you have to retreat to avoid metaphysics and to avoid the questions that I'm coming up with, is that you have to retreat into this position that wants universal claims at the same time as it denies them. And I'm saying those are universal claims by definition in epistemology and logic. I'm sorry, but they are. And it doesn't matter that you don't want them to be. And you cannot
actually feel comfortable in that position. I'm just saying that I'm a biological creature in the world with a limited access to this physical universe. My statements are only relative to what I can observe from it. And they could be very well false on another planet. They could be very well false in another universe. I don't care about this. I'm fine with the debate ending on this. My statements, they don't extrapolate to the logics that you're trying to extrapolate them to. And you're trying to get an elbow on me to then say, well, if these objective concepts that you've implicitly accepted are true, then God is true. I don't even get there at this point. I deny that the fact that I'm an agent in the world gathering information has the consequences that you attribute to me.
Okay. And my final statement, I'll just say that I don't think I've heard a coherent presentation of why I should accept metaphysical naturalism. I think we've seen a tension between the desires of what JF wants to have on one hand and what he also retreats to on the other hand. I see it as a massive bundle of contradictions. And that's because, as I said from the outset, naturalism leads to these contradictions. And it wants everything that is sensible and coherent on a theistic worldview. And it wants its cake as well. It wants to also have no theism, total chaos, total randomness, total incoherence, total determinism. But I also want dignity, and I also want freedom, and I also want all these things for me. I don't want them to be universal. They're just for me. But even those claims about you and wanting them for you, I'm sorry, but they actually do equate to universal claims, and that's just how logic works. So you can reject logic, but I think if you're going to reject the common discourse of logic and what I understand universal truth claims to be, which I didn't even know this was controversial. I've never heard anybody reject this. I think that you've exited the debate.
I didn't exit the debate, and that's probably because you're facing the first moral nihilist you've faced, or at least of my type. You're trying to constrain me to accept stuff that, in a way, people don't accept. Anyway, the fact is
but you don't understand logical entailment. I mean, I could sit here and say that I don't accept the law of non-contradiction, so it doesn't bind me. So I don't have to listen to your logics because I don't accept the law of non-contradiction. Nobody would buy that.
I can listen to it, but I don't have to be constrained by it because your logical extrapolations are fallacious. I can engage in discourse on the public space without the claims that you claim are necessary consequences of this engagement.
I think throughout the debate about 5 different places where I think you contradicted yourself. And so, no, you can't.
I can. And in fact, that's what people do. That's what everyone does in this society. That's why you have priests against homosexuality who gets their dick sucked. That's why you have people contradicting themselves. That's why you have people self-deceiving about who they truly are. Whether you like it or not, the reality of this world is that people don't behave according to universal laws. They behave according to behaviors that they've evolved. And even if there was to be a universal law, in the sense that everyone would agree on,
you just made a universal claim.
Just stop annoying me with this. I'm tired of hearing it.
Yeah, because you can't answer that because you don't know what you're talking about.
No, because I'm not constrained to the type of consistency that you're trying to apply on me. You're trying to apply on me that because I make claims that I agree with you on universal claims. I don't. Because my claims are not universal, and you know that, and this argument has been so repeated that I think people are tired. But to get back to my point, even if you had everyone agree on something, so even if you had an intersubjectively true moral system, you would have people making more babies or less babies according to various features of their brain, features of their genes, and eventually what you would have is society converging toward behaviors such as self-deception, such as not adhering to the moral rule that originally were in place, and everyone will diverge toward various forms of foraging of the moral and human environment around them, and that's a truth that applies to everything that reproduces, including you, Jay. If you do reproduce.
That's a truth that applies to everything that reproduces. Do you understand what a universal claim is? That's a universal claim. Everything that reproduces. That's a universal claim.
Okay, and everything that I know that reproduces, it applies.
Where do you guys want to go from here?
It's over, Andy.
Let's over.
We're gonna read some super chats.
Sure.
Do I go, or do you want me to? Do I stay for that or not?
I mean, there's some.
I'm not mad. By the way, I think this was a good debate. I think it was.
Yeah, it was good.
There's some super chats regarding the debate itself. I mean, you want to stick around and answer some of them.
Unless you guys are mad at me or something.
I'm not mad.
I'm not mad.
I had to go just make a coffee because I was out, but let's read here. Okay, so I'll pound through them. When we get to one that's relevant to the actual discussion, then we could pause and talk about it for a sec. About Liberty, $2. My right ball has a higher reading level than Andy. Thank you. Julio Rossi, £2. Thank you. Shad Jack, $2. Is interracial porn allowed in the Liberalist Discord? The Liberalist Discord was flagged and removed off Discord because it was too hot for.
There was too much porn.
There was way too much porn. You know, it might be a good thing now that I've quit porn. Probably a better thing to not have that. Sage 311X, $2. JF does 2 + 2 = 4. JF, 1 does 2 + 2 not equal 4?
Oh, well, 2 + 2 = 4 when you are in a system that takes the axioms of arithmetics for a starting point.
All right. Bullrock, $5. Filibustering, strawmanning, interrupting, and ad homs always come from the losing side. JF1. Some kind of taco, $5. This is for you, JF. You might need it. 1-800-273-8255. Pretty sure that's the number for the suicide hotline. Christopher Manson, $5, $5. Thank you very much. Jay Dyer brought his goons to super chat. Stay alert. As you can see, it's very split. Monk, $5. Stop stealing monk jobs. Gabriel R, $5. JF, you're not lying. Your logic is twisted. You make universal claims while denying the existence of universal truths.
I would accept this phrasing.
All right. Mimir's Head, $5. The Chad Melon eating monkey versus the virgin philosophy nerd. Uncle
I'm
Big.
Engaged, so.
Oh, there you go. Uncle Big Boobs Bear, $2. A Crowder is live. Carl's Jr., $5. Divine mind is a poor synonym for intuitive mind. Get Jonathan Haidt on and he will crush both. Philosophy is greater than religion, is greater than psychology. Madison Cool, thank you for the 10 knock. Super Godu Satsu $2. Andy, which do you identify as Autobot or Decepticon? I'd say more Autobot at this point. I was Decepticon for about 2 months there. Fam, $5. Press F for JF. Okay, here's where we get into it now. TB88, $10. If mental concepts are entirely reducible to matter, how can two different brains, which are comprised of different matter, contain the same concept? The number 2, the idea of a triangularity.
In the same way that two stars can have certain similarities without being constituted by the same atoms.
Jay, you want to respond to that?
Right, but the analogy that JF gives there, I don't think applies, because similarities in external qualities are different from similarities of abstract concepts.
Gentleman bystander, $2. Philosophical blood sports. God damn it, Andy. Julio Rossi, £5. One truth can be said to more true than another. The truthfulness of a claim can be evaluated by its ability to be proven false. Any response?
It depends, because there are many definitions of truth. We've covered some of this. There are mathematical truths that are binary. What he means is probably more like certainty about the world. And then it's not so much that something is not true or true. It's that you have a degree of certainty as an agent observing it, whether it's true or not.
All right. Beard Ninja 85, $5. Please have Bill Guide on your show. Armando Perez, $10. How do these linguists presuppositions lead to the existence of God? They could just be easily be explained by the evolutionary history of a human brain and its cognitive organization.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I would say read my paper at Jay's Analysis, Numbers Prove God, where I show that I think that they are real external to the mind objects, and then on top of that, how an impersonal force, which is kind of something that Andy hinted at earlier. Maybe it's just an impersonal energy. I kind of go into that, but I'll save that. If people want to read that paper, it's just called Numbers Prove God.
All right, Numbers Prove God. You can search that. Ericoda, $5. If J is true, how is it that the God of Abraham is the singular mind that you speak of?
I would say that that kind of requires a longer argumentation about what I have another paper that people could read called Wisdom, Creation, and Logos. And this actually goes into how the Logos is comes out of the Logos of John 1:1 comes out of the wisdom tradition of Proverbs and the wisdom text of the Jews.
All right. Super Gado Satsu, $5 again. Thank you very much. Serious question though. What is JF's opinion on people who are agnostic theist?
I actually would. I wouldn't have anything to say against them. The only flaw in Jay's argument is that he believes it's a certainty that God exists. If you think that God may exist, you're just like me. We may differ then on the percentage of chance and whether it's realistic, but I wouldn't oppose to them.
All right. Tanner Terry, $5. JF, when you say truth is subjective, how are you not presupposing that the claim truth is subjective is objectively the case?
Well, I mean, it's the same trick that Jay does. It's a trick of language rather than a trick of reality. The fact is that we are biological beings. I see myself, and that's what I can gather from the world. Am I sure about it? No, because I could be a brain in a vat. So that's why I refuse to use the word universal truth, is that I'm not so sure about it, but what I can see from the world has a certain characteristics, and making theories about what I can see has been useful to me in the past. So again, it's a trick of word around the word truth. The word truth, I've been very clear about what I meant by it. It can mean many things. Some of them are in the artificial world of mathematics that you can create in your brain. Some of them are calls that you're trying to make about the universe because you're an agent in it.
Yeah, I would say, real quick, I don't believe it's a trick of language. I actually believe it's the heart of the argument, and it's also related to metaphysical principles and truths. It's not just a language trick. And here's my gift for JF, by the way, was I found my Garbage Pail Kid where it's a brain in a vat. So JF brought up
Yeah.
being
You see, this guy, that's exactly why. Well, that's exactly why most of the things in the universe you won't be able to state objective truth. You won't be able to state universal truth about them. Is that there can be a doubt.
There can be a what?
There can be doubt.
A doubt.
Doubt.
Like doubt with a UBT.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, the Iron Pill, $10. JF holds the age-old position that the French don't have souls. I'm joking. Thank you, JF and Dyer, for this great debate about liberty. $2. Basically, the God works in mysterious ways. BS. Pressed Ham Dave, $5. Hail Warski, long live the Trapno State. I say that JF, the Marquise de Seng, is winning this battle. The Red Devil, $5. Is God okay with traps? What do you think, Jay?
No.
He's the only one who knows.
you don't think he's good with traps?
No, I mean, I think it's revealed that's not acceptable.
All right. These are getting intense here. A lot of crazy things coming up here. Some kind of taco, $5. I could pray that I live forever. That doesn't mean it will happen. Fair enough. Producer Chris, $10. The first principle of relativity is proven, but the second is not. I personally don't believe in time dilation. They did a test, and the difference between the clocks were a billionth of a second.
Time dilation, I believe, is accepted to have been proven by some evidence right now, but I'm not a physicist. I don't know.
All right, California Reactionary, $10. Free will is impossible if God is sovereign. Calvin was right. Prayer is to help us understand and submit to God's superior wisdom. Gabriel R, $2. Calvinism is cancer, LOL. Blunderbuss, $10. Don't laugh at Christian contradictions if you believe that there has been physical evolution, but not mental and psychological evolution among the human species. Adam Johnson, $5. Next debate, Southern Israelite versus Jay Dyer. What's your man? $10. Not surprising that people who believe in faith as a valid form of logic would think that JF lost. JF is dealing with a person with a psychological need for God to exist. Hail Warski. Any response?
Well, I think that kind of an argument could be turned on anybody and just say that, if you're an atheist, it's just because you have a psychological need to feel like you're free from the constraints of theism or moral systems. I mean, so that's not really a good argument in my view.
All right. The Iron Pill, $10. The laws always existed. They have never not existed. If they didn't exist at one point, the universe would have contradicted itself in multiple ways.
That's dubious. I mean, I get the thinking there, but the question of when the law emerges, it depends on which law you're talking about. If you're talking about the beginning of the universe, that's typically considered as the beginning of space-time. And what happens before that, we don't even know a law for it.
All right. Bots AM1NNOQAS, $10. Whether or not a computer or human can decipher or process logic doesn't matter. The underlying existence of a prior logic is transcendent and exists independent of its lacking a material form. Sorry. The existence of prior logic is transcendent and exists independent of it lacking a material form.
And that's something that Jay has covered a little bit. I didn't give a full response because we got on other subjects, but I would say on that, then all the possible logics that I raised earlier in the debate, they're all true too. They're all true in some way. In their relative axiomatic framework, they are true in the way you stated, where they have not been introduced into the physical universe by any being, but they are still out there. They exist. There are systems of mathematics where 2 + 2 = 7, where 2 + 3 = 10. And so if these are possible, and if you're going to talk about possibilities, live by it and accept that those logics that you hold in your brain are just one of the forms of logic.
All right. Go ahead, Jay.
Well, I just find it interesting that on the one hand, JF says that he does not accept the kind of logical constraints that I bring to the table what I say a universal claim is, but he thinks that I should accept all of these bizarre possible world scenarios that I think are completely irrational. So I think I brought rationality, and I've been confronted with irrationality.
That's because the super chat assumes this fact. It assumes that because a logic is possible, then it exists, even if it's not implemented into a being. I'm just holding the super chatter to his own stated axiom.
All right. Ray Edwards, $10. This is a shot at you, Jay. She says, Jay, your argument is absurd and imagined. You win by bashing someone else's argument being absurd and imagined, making it wrong. You are being intellectually dishonest. It's sickening.
The transcendental argument, as I said last time I was on with you guys, was first given in a logical form by Aristotle when he replied to the sophists. The transcendental argument has been used in various forms as a life outside of Kant. Kant applied it in certain categories. I don't accept Kantianism, but I'm saying that there are plenty of philosophers who use transcendental argumentation. Gödel's incompleteness proof is a mathematical form of the same type of argument. So if the person has a problem with transcendental argumentation, it's well established. If they have a problem with my presentation of it, that's a different question. But I don't think that I've been inconsistent or incoherent in my argumentation. I may have got something wrong or misrepresented or misunderstood something that Jeff said, but I don't think that I've applied it incorrectly.
Right.
It may not be convincing, but I think I've applied it correctly.
All right. Yeah. Beat Nick 11, $10 just throws on to that saying Jay is intellectually dishonest, is as intellectually dishonest as Destiny. That's just a shot at you. TB88, $5.
Well, now we know that Destiny is under investigation for child porn. So I would say I have more respects for Jay right now.
Yeah. TB88, $5. For why computers don't do anything without the reference point of external consciousness. See John Searle.
Searle, yeah.
Searle's Chinese Room. Is that like a book or something, or a website?
If I recall, Searle is a modern proponent of the idea that objects have essences, and so I would assume that he thinks that there are external, existing metaphysical and well, maybe not metaphysical, but mathematical and logical entities. So I think he would be a logical realist, if I recall. But it's been some years since we studied Searle.
All right. Okay, this is also just like a rehash of some people who've already talked about this. 16,000,48366, $10. Jay's argument in a nutshell: the world needs a God to exist. Any response is invalid unless it assumes God exists, and because it must assume God exists in right, what a fucking disappointment. He's just upset there. Prax Girl again, thank you for that $100. Thank you so much. She was the one saying JF was totally wrecked. Occam's Router, $5. J or JF? What are the differences between Atheism, Atheism, and atheism?
I don't know about Atheism.
Atheism? I never heard of that in my life.
He's probably joking.
Okay. Andriy Tromenko, $2. Thank you. The Iron Pill, $5. According to JF's view, he is a material cog in a big machine. He has no freedom, no free will. Individuality is an illusion, yet he wants liberty.
Exactly. You got it all right. All of these statements are true, except you should remove yet, because there's no contradiction between these.
Right. Lance Johnson, €5, says, JF, please apologize to Andy. He said he was joking. I'm good. Don't worry.
I apologize if I hurt him, but I was joking.
Thank you. Jonathan Bullis, $5. Just because we do not think we have free will doesn't mean we can't want other people to not hinder our wills. There are different types of freedom.
I agree.
Yeah, I would just say that my argument was that we actually do presuppose free will as a real metaphysical concept. So it would be another one of the categories that I would say is a transcendental necessity. In other words, all language, all communication does assume the reality of free will. And not just free will, but just the idea of freedom or free will assumes faculties. the will is a faculty, we would say, in our philosophy and our anthropology. And so these are real things that humans possess that are not, strictly speaking, material.
Right. Dankin Southerner, $10. JF said no universal moral truths, not no universal truths, you dishonest dinosaur. He's just getting a little upset there. Christopher Paulson, $5. Are they debating theism or universal truths? Enough with the semantics. Fuck the iron pill, $5. Does JF really believe that before Aristotle invented logic, that a cat could be both a cat and a dog at the same time? A is A, give me a break.
That is a straw man. That's not what I believe. That's not what I said.
All right. Breathing Me, $2. Jay Dyer needs to debate Nathan Confnas. Kim Larson, 20 NOK. Support the Nordic resistance movement. Hail Seer. Carl's Jr., $2. Get at Friended Forever to debate both of and J. Both of, like, I think he meant both JF and J. Larry Riddle, $10. Metaphysical claims have nothing to do with a planet or a universe that is physical by the definition of metaphysics.
Naturalism is a metaphysical claim.
All right. Into J, $2. The usual religious straw manning. Watchman, $10. Science does not claim universals, only claims within certain boundaries. Science is empirical models created based on observation that predict outcomes. You can only claim if A, B, C, then X, Y, Z.
Yeah, but again, I think that they're not understanding what a universal claim is. So to say that science is X, Y, Z, and this is how science operates, is a universal claim, even if they don't want it to be.
All right. Apple Fritter, $5. There is no DNA without RNA, and RNA is information. American Gadfly, $2. I'm not constrained by logic because logic, in quotes. Giulio Rossi, 20 pounds. Jay uses confusion as a hypnotic technique. It's too hard for you to understand, so believe in God. The universal truth that there is no universal truth underpins Western philosophy. Example, Socrates philosophy. Big up JF.
Can I respond to that?
Of course, yeah. Just stop me when you have to respond.
Both Socrates and Plato are the fathers of the idea of universals, so that person has absolutely no idea what they're talking about.
All right. Armando Perez, $5. Question for Jay. Why do you think a capacity for rational argument requires or presupposes free will?
State that again.
Sorry. Here we go.
Why do you think that a capacity for logical argument presupposes free will?
Well, because I don't think that any of these things can be reduced down to naturalism or material. I think that anytime that we engage in the process, and no, I did not get this from Stefan Molyneux. It's an argument I've been making for 20 years, even back when I was in undergrad. I believe that presupposed in the process of humans having debate, having interaction, or having communication is not just assumed that there's logical processes at work, but there's also assumed the idea of the self. There's also assumed the notion of freedom, that I'm actually deciding to say these sentences right now. I think that those, again, are transcendental categories that are not necessarily empirically verifiable, but we have every reason to believe in. And how do I prove that? I prove it by the impossibility of the contrary. If I deny the ability to have free will and to make decisions and choose what I'm talking about, then that undercuts the totality of reason and rationality across the board. What real quick too for JF, I have a book I would recommend written by an agnostic, and he's not interested in theism at all. But one thing he does, I think, show is that it's called Action and Perception by Alvin Noe, and he did a lot of research into cognitive processes and the philosophy of perception. I just think you would find it fascinating. It's not really totally related to theism, but he does show a lot of documentary and empirical evidence about how we perceive things, which I think you would like.
Okay.
All right. The Iron Pill, $5. If one is A, then one is A. If one is A, but also sometimes B, one is therefore not A, but A and sometimes B. If a dog is a dog, it is only a dog. Fedoras, please. Kyler, $2.
Try that in a microwave and you'll understand that the dog is not always a dog.
Kyler, $2. If this brainlet says universal claim one more time. Gabriel R, $10. JF truly is a man of blind faith. In other words, in other worlds and universes, he is lost in his fantasy. I thought atheists relied on logic, reason, and evidence. He admits he does not accept rules of logic. LOL.
Yeah, but the reason I engage not on evidence in this particular debate is that Dyer is making a special argument when he does the transcendental argument. He claims that it's not even possible in our world that God doesn't exist. And so I don't have to engage about whether we descend from monkey-like creatures. I want him to acknowledge that we might descend from monkey-like creatures, that we might have machines that are able to perform output that are good without a God controlling them.
Well, I can say that in my younger academic days, I wasn't at all committed to necessarily to theistic evolution or to just straight up naturalistic, no theistic evolution, just straight up evolution or anything like that. So I wasn't necessarily in my 20s committed either way. So, I mean, I guess at one time I considered it possible that there were those things. But my own personal existential psychological state, I believe, is separate from objective formal argumentation. And what I've tried to give in the transcendental argument is what I believe is a formal, objective, logical argument, which really isn't. I mean, I'm not saying it has no relation to our personal experiences over time in life and all that, but it's strictly speaking not based on that.
And that's actually a double standard where Jay has spent his time in this debate taking my claims, the claims that I made from my brain, and wanting to extrapolate them into universal truths. That's where he fails, where he acknowledges that what happens in his brain doesn't matter, just like what happens in my brain doesn't matter. What matters is whether our brains could agree on something. We couldn't tonight.
All right. Julio Rossi, 20 pounds. What is most truthful depends on its ability to be proven false. A scientific meaning of truth is one where you can say, I think this is true to this point because I've disproved all these other possibilities. Greatest Goyim, $5. Destiny 1, to be honest. Jesus Christ. Tanner Terry, $20. JF. A coherence theory of truth states that the truth of any proposition consists in its coherence with some specific set of propositions. With what belief in your mind does the proposition truth and subjective cohere?
Well, again, a semantic truth on two meanings of a semantic trick on two meanings of truth. When you define coherentism, you use the word truth to talk about those local truths that will develop within the ideological system that stems from your axiom. You're trying to get me outside of the coherentism network. If you're outside of it, I need a definition for your new use of truth, which may be the same or may be different.
All right, Kyler, $2. Rack the bike race course now. A Cyclone Phil, $5. Jay is just Darth Dawkins with less gray hair. Ericota, $5. All I can say that both these guys are good examples of the white race. Bull Rock, $5. Swit, I need a universal claim to proclaim JF is the winner. Gotcha. Yes, JF, there are differences between reality and perspective. And then he continues to say on a different super chat, another $5, but matter will be matter and energy will be energy. Perspective may divide, but the concepts are all universal. You are
even
both
that
imperfect.
Statement is false. Matter will be matter, energy will be energy. That is false. You can convert from one to the other.
Vinny S, $22. Can we get a new Canadian liberalist Discord for spice memes and debates only? Love you guys. I think someone already made one. It's somewhere on Twitter. I'd have to find that. Ava Liberty, $2. J basic logic is a trick. F. Christopher Paulson, $5. I gotta say, this debate on truth was very interesting when JP and Sam Harris did it. Oof. Fuck this guy. Baya000, $5. Hey, shadowy and transient, how aimless and arbitrary the human intellect looks within nature. There were eternities during which it did not exist. Herpaderp, 1776, $5. What a little surrendering monkey retreating in the face of a resistance to his sophomoric political theory and logic. I think that was a smash on you, JF, there. Yeah. The Iron Pill, $5. JF, is everything relative? If everything is relative, so is the proposition everything is relative. If you accept a contradiction.
Yeah, it doesn't matter because you don't have to apply rules of logic to statements as if they applied everywhere in the universe. When I say everything is relative, I'm thinking of certain stuff. I'm thinking of agents in a universe. I'm thinking about our universes. Everything is relative could be false in a world. It could be true in a world. We need to have more definitions for these things to even mean something. Making gotchas, making an infinite amount of gotchas on semantic stuff like this does not bring us to the existence of God. I'm sorry.
Right. They're not semantic points. They're points about epistemology, which are, again, very well known. And they're points about logic, which are very well known. And so they relate to reality and they relate to the world. They're not semantic tricks. They're the heart of my argument.
All right. Tuesday Money, $5. Proud of you, Andy. Thanks, Tuesday. I love you. Mountain Goat, $20. Jay still needs to demonstrate a universal truth. Then he needs to explain how it makes his particular perception of God an objective reality.
Well, I think that throughout the debate, we dealt with many things that I agreed would be universal claims and truths. I know that JF does not accept them as universal claims and truths, and I think that that's because they are problematic for the system. But I think that in our world, there are all kinds of things that we believe that are universally true. Some of the more forceful of which were all the different things that I listed, I think, that are transcendental categories: the self, identity over time, belief in the past, et cetera, that we just are distinct from the external world. I think these are all universal truths. Absolutely.
Right. Perfect. We're actually almost done with super chats. That's good. Ocean Redux, $5. Good show. Keep up the good work. Nibba, Sweetie Squad forever. Sweetie Squad. Sweetie Squad. Shit, I fucked that up. Mirror's Head, $5. Who Mirror, by the way, JF wants to debate the We Was Kangs dude. So I've been emailing with them. We're gonna set that up for soon. Up for in 2 weeks. I meant not for soon because that's retarded.
It will be We Was Kangs against who?
Mirror's Head. MIMI.
Okay.
And so the guy from We Was Kangs radio, he emailed me and we're going to plan that for him. He needs 2 weeks, he said. So I'm like, all right, cool. And he says, Jay, is God the creator of logic? Is it possible for God to change the laws of logic? If so, are there truly a universal, or if not, is God omnipotent?
I would say that the human realm, when the logic that God has established in the world is applicable to the here and the now, and to this dimension, so to speak. They are reflections of the divine mind, as the book of Sirach says in the Bible. So in a sense, they are established just like regularity in nature is established for the here and the now. But in the future, in the next dimension, in the next world, in the next life, that kind of thing, it's certainly possible that there could be principles or ways of transcending the known laws and principles of logic, but we don't really have any reference or basis to know exactly how that goes down. And even like modern science toys with this notion.
All right. Podcast to sleep to, $5 Fuck the demerge. Viking Insane, $5. JF, shout out from the Gaspe. Dyer n'est pas d'argument de n'est pas certain. I'm trying to read French there. You who flings pud, $5. Good debate, guys. Keep putting Andy in his place, Papa JF. I'm going to ban you now. 1 sec. No, just kidding. Never Alone Forever, $2. Thank you. Eric Jewel, $5. Moral nihilism, atheism, naturalism. None of these will help you save the white race. Super God Osatsu, $10. One last question for JF. The game series Shin Megami Tensei depicts God as a totalitarian entity that keeps humanity under his thumb. What are your thoughts on their depiction, as well as it's part of Persona 5, was part of that series as well. Amazing game. But yeah, what do you think?
If a God exists, he probably doesn't care about us. I would say among the possible gods, the gods that do care about us are just a subset. I don't think that he would be authoritarian like that. But he could. I think it's possible.
All right. C. Vojcik 01, $5. J. Dyer must debate Styx on occultism. Great debate. Max Quantaloops, because you were saying cantaloupes, quantaloops. Everyone in the chat was going nuts on that. That'd be a cool debate.
Can I say that I did have a little tweet exchange with Styx, and I'm going to call out Styx if he wants to debate. Then let's do it.
Oh, nice. We have Styx next week as well versus who was the guy again, or the group? It was a group, right?
Yeah, so Styx will be with the Old Order against me for censorship. Now, what does he want to debate with you, Jay?
Occult.
Well, he didn't say that he would, but he just replied and said that he didn't know if he would be able to. I don't remember his exact tweet, but it was something like, I'm not sure. But we were in the context of the occult, Hermeticism, because he translates those, and I've read most of those texts, so I'm very familiar with Hermeticism and all that stuff. So.
Yeah, you will set that up definitely. Medicated misanthrope, $2. Please apologize to Andy. JF, don't worry, shut up. Herbert Derb, 1776, $2. Is JF Catholic? If so, it explains a lot. You're not Catholic, are you?
I'm an atheist, agnostic atheist.
All right, Never Alone Forever, $5. Explain to the Atheos Pope Jean Paul II encyclical Fides et Ratio.
Fides et Ratio, which is an encyclical that John Paul wrote. I'm not sure what they're saying there.
LM, $5. I think being exposed to all these ideas is a good thing, and I respect Andy, JF, and Jay's contributions. Thank you, guy. Thank you. Jack Carton, £2. What is your actual argument for theism, Jay? I think, just watch the thing. We're almost done here. We're at the end. A Northern Chap, £5. Dyer has big words but small meaning. Oof. Digital Dreams, £10. JF.
I don't even know the meanings of these words. I just got a dictionary and I was just like writing out big words, and I said, I'll just throw these in. I have no idea what they mean.
Digital Dreams, £10. JF, you should be destroying this Kantian nerd with your fat Nietzschean cock, my dude. Gender fluid, $2. Will jury nullification be banned in the Trapno state? I'm not sure. Probably. I mean, we'll talk about that when we discuss Trapno state meanings. Medicated misanthrope, $2. Hitler loved puppies. Northern Chap, £10. Dyer sounds like an overpaid Berkeley theology professor. Stop talking like a dictionary and give some valid opinions. Also, button your shirt up. #beta. Oh, this is getting deep, guys. Okay, the Iron Pill, $5. If there was no moral evil upon earth, there would be no physical evil. Joseph de Mastre. Tanner Terry, $50. Thank you so much. JF, I would accept that definition of truth, but I wasn't playing a semantic trick. You accepted that the truth of Proposition X consisted in its coherence with some set propositions. Y. I asked, what is Y for your belief of truth is subjective?
Well, Y is a set of proposition by your own definition. So Y would be any sort of statement you can make and test whether they are coherent with your axioms.
Right. This is the hardest amount of reading I've ever had to do. I've learned more reading these super chats than college when I was in college before dropping out. Colostan, Lord of Verlin, $7. Gentlemen, I come to spread the blessings of the truth giver of life. Grandfather Nurgle, embrace the blessings and gain life eternal. Ericoda, $2. How does Satan fit in with your worldview, Jay?
Well, I mean, that's a long, protracted thing that we could get into. I would just say
maybe with sticks.
I'll hold off on it. Was what?
I said maybe with sticks that'd be a good conversation.
Okay. Well, we can save that for sticks. Or there's also an essay that Saint Athanasius wrote called "Against the Heathen." If anybody wants to read that, it deals with that question.
All right, we're fucking home stretch here, boys. Edmund Ploppy, $2. Sixth sick, sheik's sixth sheep sick. Eat it, Andy. Yeah, you fucked me up on that one. And even regular sentences will fuck me up, so you could not even do a tongue twister and I'll still fuck it up. Adam Yuri, $5. Jay claims that existence of self is a universal truth, but doesn't prove that the self is not an illusion. Does he have an argument for that?
Yeah, so any position like that tries to argue that all of reality is illusory or everything in our experience is like a trick from the evil demon that Descartes talked about. Actually, I think the best argument against that is that if you were to learn that proposition or that truth within this realm of experience, then that would also be part of the illusion. So actually, I think it's self-refuting. So if you say everything is illusory, and then you have come to the truth that everything is illusory, your coming to the truth of everything being illusory is also contradictory and illusory. And so that means any position like Far Eastern, Hindu, Maya, all that stuff, I think, is nonsense and contradictory.
People will notice that there is not a single definition of self and that Jay doesn't have one. Or if he has one, he has not stated it, and there are alternative definitions of self. The self that we talk about when we say I, it could be our brain, it could be our experience, it could be the parts of our brain that don't experience, it could be our organs, it could be what's contained in our skin, it could be outside of our skin. There's not a single definition of self, and so it actually contradicts the property of identity that Jay likes to rely on so much.
Well, just because I didn't give the definition of how we conceive of it in our worldview does not mean that there's not a definition. And it also, just because people have different perspectives or definitions also does not mean that it's a contradiction, because it's more so a question of what is true and what is false in relation to that. So that's a different question. So I believe that our view of what a self is going to be conditioned by the worldview as a whole. And so that would, yes, you're right. In one sense, I could mean the whole person. I could mean my mind or my soul. I could mean different things depending upon what the context is. But just because there's different context doesn't mean that there's no such thing as what a self is. Any of the transcendental categories of things that I listed, there is an aspect of mystery to them, but just like something like infinity, we wouldn't say that because there's an aspect of mystery or there's an aspect of something that's unclear about it, that we therefore don't have any knowledge of it, or that it's a completely relative or uncertain.
I think that the concept of self is relative, and you basically admitted it by saying there could be people having disagreement. There would be no objective way to split between two people who say, no, the self is this, or someone else who says, no, the self is this.
There is a way.
The person who thinks that it's his gene or the person who thinks that it's his brain, of course it's going to be any of these definitions.
No, the way to distinguish between these competing definitions of any specific within a paradigm would be the paradigm as a whole. So my definition of what a self is going to be conditioned by my theological view.
So exactly, we have someone who started with the theological view as an axiom. That's what we're getting revealed through the debate. He's not proving the fact that God exists. He's assuming it.
The proof is in the impossibility of the opposing worldview.
All right, Eric Coda, $5. How does Jay think that we have free will when we are already controlled by a great higher mind we have no understanding of?
I never said that we were controlled by the higher mind. I believe that because God is who he is and who I believe he's revealed as, he has the ability to create beings with freedom. So we're not controlled by this deity.
All right. And then Eric Coda threw out another $5. Thank you so much for supporting the show. And what is your opinion on magic, Jay? Is technology magic, or is magic a metaphysical way of thinking that we have forgotten? Deep. That's deep.
Yeah, it could be depending on what sense people mean. I mean, Arthur Clarke's third law says that, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So in that sense, one could conceive of magic as just advanced technology. It's just depending on how we define the word. So if you mean in the classical ritual magic sense of, do we have the ability to affect change in the psychosphere through our will? I think that there could be something to that. And so there's kind of an evil version of that as well as a good spiritual version of that. So, like the Orthodox liturgy, we would say is kind of a good version of theurgy. And then you have invocation of demons or the satanic or something like that would be the inverse, an evil version of that.
All right, we have only 4 more home stretch. If you're enjoying, by the way, remember to hit like, help support the show, and go subscribe to JF and to Jay. Both their links are down there. I also have my new channel, a gaming channel I'll be on at midnight tonight Eastern, called Warski Woohooski, made by Brittany Venti, actually. Go subscribe to that and check it out. And I'll be fucking around there tonight. Okay, so we're so fucking, oh my God. Stop donating! Colin Lorenzo, $5. The existence of God is a universal truth claim. These semantic arguments haven't convinced anyone who accepts science as more than theism. Damien Della Herta, $10. Paying to get on the show. I have some questions for Jay on free will. Please email me. We're already at 3 hours and 15 minutes. We have to pound through this. But email me, Andy Warski. We'll try and set that up. Joshua Graham, $10. What even makes a truth universal? Couldn't an intersubjective agreement among all cultures still not be a technicality? Oh my God. Everyone's donating and it's moving. All cultures still not be technically a truth, even though it's universally recognized. Couldn't an intersubjective agreement among all cultures stop fucking? You know what? Fuck it. Next one. Fine. Yes. Everyone's donating. Never Alone Forever, $5. And Dvorsky, sorry for the confusion. I wish Jay to explain the link between faith and reason fides at ratio, whatever, however you say that, to atheists who see faith as illogical. Follows, $5. Will logic work in the Fapno state as it does in this universe? I prefer if axioms were constructed for each individual. It'd be more fun. We'll work on that. I like that one better. Thomas Jefferson, $2. Jesus Lord, prove me wrong. Jack Carton, £1. Thank you. Leo Ways, $2. Gas to snooze. Alarm no state now. Chuck Reardon, $2. Andy, speak your speech. Ali, £2. Take my money, Andy. Taven, £10. In a world of fake news and fake personas online, it's refreshing that you and JF let your foibles hang out. Cheers for the streams as long as they continue. And last one, Adam Yuri, $20. I'm not a Buddhist, but my understanding of, oh my God, these words, Theravada, Buddhist thought of the self or lack thereof, is that essentially the the aggregation of biological sense. I can't read this anymore. JF, the orange one, just read it.
So I'm not a Buddhist, but my understanding of Theravada Buddhist thought of the self, or lack thereof, is that it's essentially the aggregation of biological sense faculties. They claim illusion in that sense.
Okay, whatever. Gender fluid, $2 is unique. New York, unique. Yeah, air code at $1. Thank you. Everyone, guys, we got through it. Go subscribe to those. Andy lost. I lost the debate. Go subscribe to Jay and to JF, of course, guys. It got heated. It was interesting. I
want to thank you guys, and JF. I appreciate everything that you brought to the debate. I thought you brought some good questions, some good heat. And I apologize for interrupting. I was getting very, very worked up myself, but it was a great debate.
It's all part of the game.
It was fantastic, and we hope to have you on soon, Jay. This is something that has been long awaited, a debate with you. And my God, both of you brought, like, it was a war in the chat. People were hating on me. We were all flipping out. But it's good, and I'm not upset. I'm not gonna go JO when I'm done. I'm on day 2, no FAP. I'm gonna succeed and become a healthier person for it. Guys, thank you so much, and thank you to everyone in the chat. And we'll see you all on the next Warski Live.
Bye bye.
Peace.